Islands aren't supposed to just, disappear. But that's exactly what happened in the Caspian Sea. NASA satellites watched a brand new island emerge, only to see it vanish completely within a year, like a ghost. And this wasn't a glitch or a mirage. It was real land, formed by a violent mud volcano, then swallowed back into the sea like it never existed. So what's going on here? The ghost tale started in early 2023, off the coast of Azerbaijan. There's this place called the Kumani Bank, a so-called mud volcano in the Caspian Sea, about 15 miles out. It has erupted multiple times, and each time, this led to a fascinating story, the one we're learning about now. When it erupted recently, it spewed a chaotic mix of mud, gas, and rock into the sea. But this time, NASA's satellites were there to catch it all on camera. In November 2022, the volcano's peak was still hidden beneath the waves. Just 4 months later, a brand new island appeared, stretching about 1,300 feet across. And then, in December 2024, it was gone, completely erased from the map. NASA said it had retreated from view like an apparition. The same thing happened in 1861, 1950, and several times since. But how does it work? Well, most people think of volcanoes as fiery mountains that spew molten lava. But mud volcanoes, like the Kumani Bank, are a completely different kind. They don't erupt with lava. Instead, they blast out thick, bubbling mud, sometimes mixed with methane gas, and that's a stinker. Scientists have found over 1,100 of them on land and shallow water, and there may be over 10,000 more hiding deep in the ocean. Now, these things are strange, dangerous, and still barely understood, and Azerbaijan is just a goldmine for them. Over 300 mud volcanoes have been counted on land and offshore, more than anywhere else on Earth. So, why so many? Because the Arabian and Eurasian tectonic plates collide under Azerbaijan, pushing against each other. This creates crazy pressure. Deep underground, water gets heated, but instead of melting rock, it mixes with minerals to create thick, pressurized mud. Tectonic forces squeeze this mud upward through faults and cracks in the Earth's crust. And when the pressure becomes too much, well, boom, it suddenly bursts, blasting mud, rock, and gas into the air. And sometimes these eruptions create temporary islands, like the one NASA just saw. But there's another crazy part. Mud volcanoes aren't just messy, they can be terrifyingly dangerous. Some mud volcanoes are small puddles just a few feet across. But others? Well, they're absolute monsters. The tallest known mud volcano is about 2,300 feet high, nearly as tall as the Burj Khalifa skyscraper. The widest one is 6 miles across, big enough to swallow an entire city. Which brings us to the weirdest part. In some cases, they don't just spew mud, they ignite, sending massive fireballs into the sky. A horrible fountain of mud, gas, and flames towering hundreds of feet high. One of those happened in 2001, and it burned for days. That's why they often lead to horrifying catastrophes. In 2006, there was the Lucy mud volcano disaster in Indonesia. It erupted out of nowhere in the middle of a populated area. And what's even crazier, the mud flow never stopped. It's still erupting today. It buried tons of villages under the mud. Over 24,000 people lost their homes, and scientists predicted that this horror would continue for 20 more years. At first, no one knew what caused it. Some think it was just an earthquake 2 days later. Others blame drilling operations nearby. A gas company was exploring right before the eruption happened. Well, whatever the reason, it has turned entire towns into ghostly wastelands. And they're not just dangerous for us. They're a disaster to the planet in general. They just love to leak greenhouse gases. They constantly leak methane, one of the most powerful gases that warms up our entire planet. These guys release between 30 and 140 million tons of methane per year. That's up to 9% of all natural methane emissions, and more than some entire countries produce. Well, that's the estimate at least. Since most mud volcanoes are deep underwater, we still don't know how much gas is escaping into the ocean and the atmosphere. Many of them lie on continental slopes, too. That means they're holding huge amounts of trapped methane. If they suddenly decide to go wild, yeah, that won't be good for anyone. Some past eruptions in Azerbaijan have been insane as well. A few mud volcanoes there blasted flames so high that pilots could see them from airplanes. On July 4, 2021, a mud volcano on Dashtli Island erupted like a true monster. The flames shot up 1,600 feet into the sky, that's taller than the Empire State Building. The fireball was visible from miles away. Even the capital of the country, Baku, saw it light up the night sky. Luckily, no oil platforms nearby were damaged, but it really scared people for a moment. Another one, also near Baku, erupted in 2018 so massively it shook the ground for miles. Luckily, the Kumani Bank isn't such a monster, well, compared to those other examples. In 1950, the Kumani Bank erupted again, creating a horrifying pillar of fire about 330 feet high. It burned for 15 minutes. This created a large oval island as well, and it disappeared just about half a year later. Then another powerful disaster took place in 1959. For almost 20 minutes, flame reached the heights of about 650 feet, like about 2 statues of Liberty, including the base. The eruption brought up breccia, a type of rock made of broken fragments, and this time, a newly formed island lasted for 3 more years before eroding away. The thing is, those islands are never built to last. Mud volcano islands aren't made of solid rock, they're fragile piles of sediment. The Caspian Sea's waves and currents slowly eat away at them, washing it back into the ocean bit by bit. NASA isn't sure if the 2023 Kumani Bank eruption was as fire as that, but it didn't last that long either. All that remained was a faint shadow of land, barely peeking above the water. But will it rise again? Well, probably, just don't get too excited. The Caspian Sea might create more ghost islands in the future, only to erase them again, as if they never existed. Now, interestingly, not all mud volcanoes are disasters waiting to happen. Some are actually ancient holy sites. Deep in Balochistan, Pakistan, stands Chandragupta, a sacred, constantly bubbling mud volcano. Hindu pilgrims believe it's a gateway to the deities. They visit it as part of their journey to the nearby temple. Before entering the temple, they tossed offerings into the mud pool, coconuts, rice, and sometimes even money. This volcano seems safe. People prayed to it for centuries. It never erupts, just slowly breathes like a living being. But even though it's sacred, it's still dangerous. The land around it is unstable, and eruptions can happen without warning. What's even crazier is that we might not be alone in having these bizarre formations. Scientists think that Mars may have mud volcanoes too. NASA has recently spotted strange dome-like creatures on the red planet. That could be ancient Martian mud volcanoes. And if that's the case, that's just another clue into an entire pile of evidence that Mars used to have liquid water. If they investigate it, they might even find some signs of life there. Well, maybe. They also think that Europa, Jupiter's icy moon, might have a version of these guys, except instead of mud, they erupt slushy water and ice. Now, the worst part about those guys is that we still don't fully understand them. Scientists can't predict how much methane they really release, why some of them erupt while others continue to sleep, and what they can tell us about life on other planets. We barely scratched the surface, literally. The deepest mud volcanoes are thousands of feet under the ocean. That's why many of them are completely unstudied right now. But perhaps they'll tell us their stories one day.
You're chillin' in Hawaii, on the island of Oahu. A friend calls you up. Hey, I'm here too. Meet me in Maui. Great, but how do you get there? Your first thought is probably to take a ferry, but that's impossible. Hawaii is a pretty unique place. It's the most expensive state to live in. It has its own official language besides English. And it's the only American state made up entirely of islands. Hawaii has a total of 137 islands. 8 are the main ones, but only 6 are open to tourists. And the distance between those islands is probably bigger than you'd expect. For example, traveling from Oahu to the Big Island is around 185 miles, which is about the same distance as Chicago to Indianapolis. You might be surprised that you can't make that trip by boat. In fact, the only ferry system that actually takes passengers in Hawaii runs between Maui and Lanai. That's it. So your only option is to travel between islands is by plane. Honestly, it's a little surprising, especially considering how many people visit Hawaii every year. Tourism pretty much drives their economy, and in the first 8 months of 2024 alone, over 6 million people visited its beautiful beaches. Knowing that, we would expect Hawaii to set up a good ferry system to make it easier for visitors to get around. Just like in Greece. This would probably boost tourism even more, bringing more money to the state. But believe me, authorities and private companies also know that. In fact, they've already tried it. Ferries were a big way of getting around in Hawaii from the 19th century up until the 1950s. Since then, there have been a few attempts to bring back a ferry service, but unfortunately, they have all failed. One of the biggest attempts was the Hawaii Super Ferry, which aimed to provide a fast, affordable boat service between islands. It could carry almost 900 passengers and even allow them to bring their own cars along. The trial run started in 2007, and people were excited, but it turned into a big fiasco. A bunch of legal and environmental issues came up, like concerns about the impact on marine life, especially whales. The courts decided the ferry didn't go through the proper environmental reviews, and that caused a lot of trouble. By 2009, after tons of protests and setbacks, they had to shut it down. If a project like this comes up again, it will probably fail one more time. And there are a few reasons why it's almost impossible to set up a regular ferry system there. Let's start by talking about Hawaii's rough waters. They are deep and wild. Take the Alenoiaha Channel, for example. It's a 30-mile stretch that separates Maui from the Big Island. Its name means Great Billow Smashing Channel, and it lives up to that. It's over 6,000 feet deep, making it one of the most dangerous stretches of water on Earth. The wind there is also super strong, the fastest in Hawaii's coastal waters. But it's not any easier in the rest of the archipelago. The whole region gets hit by storms from the Pacific up north, sending big waves crashing into the islands and making the waters rough and unpredictable. Swells can come from 3, 4, or even more directions, making the sea feel really choppy. Someone who's not used to taking ferry boats would definitely find that, well, uncomfortable, to say the least. To deal with rough seas like this, the ferries have to be really big and strong. But that also makes them more expensive and harder to run than the ones in places like Alaska or Washington State. Another reason it's so tough to set up this system today has to do with marine life. A big ship moving through the shallower waters when docking could really damage the local ecosystem. And there's also the problem that the sea routes are also the migration paths of many sea animals, like humpback whales and spinner dolphins. Not to mention, ferry services can make it easier to spread harmful plants and animals, what experts call invasive species. See, Hawaii's ecosystem is super unique because it's been isolated out in the middle of the Pacific. When we talk about plants and animals that are native to Hawaii, we mean they got there on their own, no humans involved. They arrived with the help of waves, wind, or even birds flying over. But events like these are super rare, so for over 70 million years, their plants and animals didn't have to deal with outside competition. That's made them really fragile. So, when new species get brought in by us, it can be a big problem, and they could end up harming the environment. Hawaii's already been battling invasive species like fire ants, coqui frogs, and Meconium, a fast-growing plant from South America that takes over native forests. People there worry that ferries, which carry cars and cargo between islands, could accidentally spread these invaders even more. Like we mentioned at the beginning of the video, the long distances between their lands don't really help either. For example, if you were to travel from Oahu to the Big Island of Hawaii by boat, it would take around 30 hours, and that's without any stops. The same trip by plane takes about 50 minutes. Ferries that cover long distances are much more expensive, so they need a much bigger demand to make them profitable. On top of that, the state doesn't really have the infrastructure, like enough ports and terminals to support the operations. So setting up new routes is pretty much out of the question. Airplanes, on the other hand, are a different story. The air travel industry in Hawaii is already well established and super competitive. That means flying is still the most practical option in Hawaii. Planes are quick, they don't make you seasick, and are pretty affordable, usually costing around $100 for a round trip. Okay, but what do the locals think about all this? Well, apparently, there isn't a huge demand for residents to commute between the islands all that often. Oahu is the busiest island in Hawaii, with about 70% of the state's population living there. It is where Honolulu, the capital, is located, and where most of the state's business happens. So, people from the other islands usually come over for a specific doctor's appointment or to catch a big concert. And that might happen once or twice a year, no more than that. So, even if people could choose between taking a ferry and a plane for these special occasions, most of them would probably still prefer flying. There are plenty of options between the main island airports. Planes usually start flying around 5 in the morning, and there are flights available every hour until the last one, which is usually at 9 in the evening. If you've been dreaming of going to this paradisiacal place but are worried about spending too much on plane tickets, I have some tips for you. First off, keep in mind that visiting all the main islands in 5 days or less is way too ambitious. So, if you don't have much time to spend there, think about your priorities. Each of the 6 islands open to tourists has its own vibe and activities. But you don't need to visit them all in one trip, and you can save some money by sticking to fewer islands. You can still explore the diversity of the islands by picking 2 that offer a nice contrast to each other. For example, while Oahu has that bustling city energy, Kauai has a much more relaxed vibe. Also, flights in the morning are usually cheaper, and it might be better to fly on a weekday rather than the weekend, although the price difference isn't usually huge. Hopefully these tips will save you some cash while still having an unforgettable island hopping adventure in Hawaii. Don't forget to share this video with a friend who's also dreaming of exploring these amazing islands.
You're on a ship when you notice some water foaming nearby. It looks as if a huge vessel just sunk there, but you don't see any debris. Steam is rising over the water, and large bubbles appear on the surface. In a couple of minutes, you see a small piece of land appear right in front of your eyes. It's releasing flames and lava. Millions of gallons of water evaporate in the mouth of the volcano. Frightened, you get away from this place. For the next 3 years, the small island covered with volcanoes will slowly be emerging from the water. Every day, it'll erupt and fill the sky with black ash. When the ash settles, it'll get mixed with the water and form the shore. This eruption lasted 3 years, and finally, by 1967, the island of Surtsey on the southern coast of Iceland was fully formed. Surtsey is one of the few islands that have emerged from the depths to the surface of the sea. But it's almost impossible to get here. The island has a unique ecological system, and scientists want to find out how it's going to develop without human influence. Only a few people from all over the world have permission to walk around on the island. For many decades, people's minds have been occupied with the mystery of Easter Island, a remote piece of volcanic soil far away in the Pacific Ocean. But our planet hosts thousands of such lonely islands. What is so peculiar about this one? The mystery is concealed not in the island itself, but giant stone statues covering it. Who created the world-famous huge stone heads? Did they serve any specific purpose? Rapa Nui, which is the name given to Easter Island by its first inhabitants, is the territory of Chile and is situated in the southern Pacific Ocean. and it is so far away that you can easily consider it one of the most distant places on the world map. The only transport that can take you there is a plane. If you want to get to this destination point, you will need to spend 5 hours on board, flying from Santiago to Easter Island. The statues carry the name Moai. They started to be carved at some point between the 13th and 15th centuries. Rapa Nui statues are easily recognized thanks to their peculiar faces. They have long noses, wide chins, rectangular ears, heavy brows, and deeply set eyes. It is quite curious that the nostrils curl in the way fish hooks do. Firstly, people thought that the statues were made up only by their heads. But surprisingly, it turned out that there are full bodies that are attached to the heads. It was discovered during excavations in May 2012. The bodies were just hidden underground. Still, the heads of the statues, visible from the first site, make up 3/8 of each statue's size. As for the arms, they were carved against the bodies, resting in different positions. Most statues, 834 out of 887, were carved from the material called tuff, which is, in fact, compressed volcanic ash. Curiously, all the statues except one faced inland. It means their backs are turned to the ocean. Perhaps the reason for that was the belief that the statues were the protectors of the villagers. That's why they overlooked the settlement. The only statues not fitting into this pattern can be found at Ahu Akivi, a sacred place for the people of Rapa Nui. People keep wondering how the statues of such a huge weight have been distributed all around the island. What's more, in 1722, visitors found a small local population between 1,500 and 3,000 people. How could it correlate with the hundreds of statues on the island? The mystery surrounding the way Rapa Nui people could move the statues challenged the researchers, not letting them back off. In the 1980s, some of them decided to recreate a statue and check the possibility of moving it around. Several decades passed, and another group of American scientists proved that the islanders could tie ropes encircling the huge statues and move them with a walking motion. They backed up their theory with practice, moving a full-size replica using this method. Actually, their idea can explain why Rapa Nui folklore states that the statues were walking with the help of magic. It explains the way the statues were transported to their designated places. Our next stop is Brazil, far from the center of Sao Paulo. That's where you can find an island that's almost impossible to get to, but if you succeed, you're unlikely to leave it. It's called Snake Island. There's no other place on the planet with such a high concentration of snakes. They are the only owners of the island, since no other animals can survive among them. The golden lancehead. They are one of the most venomous species in the world. Their venom is very powerful and fast-acting. If you let this reptile bite a raw piece of meat, the place around the bite will start to melt. Count me out. Imagine you're on this island and the snakes don't bite you. The most interesting thing you can find there is an old lighthouse. It's hidden in the dense foliage of trees. People lived on the island a long time ago. Rumor has it that the last keepers were in the lighthouse when the snakes broke in. No one has lived there ever since. How these unique snakes appeared on the island is still a mystery. The most popular legend claims that a pirate came there a long time ago. He hid a treasure somewhere on the island. Then, he left the snakes in the spot where the chest was hidden. The pirate hoped the reptiles would scare people away from his gold coins and jewelry. Since then, a few snakes have managed to increase their population thousands of times. And some of them, reportedly, are wearing jewelry. No, not really. Even if you wanted to get to the island for some reason, the patrol services would stop you. Only a few people in special protective suits can get there to conduct scientific research. Susie gets here on a small boat. As soon as she steps on the ground, she turns on the live broadcast on her phone. She records dolls hanging on trees all over the island. They have different clothes, different sizes, and faces. There are about a dozen creepy toys on every tree. Rain and hot sun deform the toys' faces. They are covered with moss and greenery and have taken eerily scary forms. There are rumors they come to life at night. Wanna check? One of the subscribers writes, "No problem," Susie agrees. The sun is going down below the horizon. Darkness falls on the forest. Susie is wandering among the trees. The moon lights her way. She makes a fire to get warm. At this moment, she hears a strange sound. She notices some movement out of the corner of her eye. The phone turns off. Susie looks up and sees one of the dolls, lit up by the flames, is turning its head in her direction. Susie screams and runs away from this place. Of course, the doll didn't move. You can notice a little bird sitting behind the toy's head. A few days later, Susie found out that one of the Mexico City locals had moved to the island in the 50s and filled it with toys. He collected dolls from landfills and canals around the island. He spent several days decorating every tree. In the beginning, it looked strange and exciting for tourists. Then, as the dolls began to age and rot, this place became more attractive for people. There are several legends about the reasons for his obsession. Okay, Susie's had enough of these mysteries and creepy places. Now she wants to admire something majestic that was created by nature. She arrives in California's Sequoia National Park, where the most giant trees in the world grow. She's looking with an open mouth at the biggest tree in the world, a giant sequoia. Its name is General Sherman, and it's about 2,000 years old. The volume of this tree is almost half the size of an Olympic swimming pool. Despite its age, it's not the oldest one. There are redwoods in the park that appeared 3,000 years ago. And the tallest tree in the world grows here, in California. It's a redwood that belongs to the sequoia family. It's called Hyperion. This is 1/3 of the Eiffel Tower's height. Just imagine what kind of view you can see from the tree's top. Now Susie is on the island of Madagascar. She's going to see unique baobab trees. They look like something has ripped them out of the ground, turned them upside down, and shoved them back in. Baobabs are some of the most beautiful trees in the world. Most of them are here in the Alley of Baobabs, but you can also find them in Australia and South Africa. Their tree trunks resemble sponges. They expand and absorb moisture during the rainy season. Elephants like to drink it. They tear off and chew the trunk's parts to quench their thirst. At night, flowers bloom on the baobabs. They smell like sour milk and attract bats. But the most interesting thing is that the baobab doesn't dry out and doesn't fall like other trees after the end of its life. It crumbles, settles, and leaves a pile of pieces on the ground.
There's a mysterious island that appears and disappears like magic. Just like Schrödinger's cat, this Schrödinger's island exists and doesn't exist at the same time. Officially, it's called Sandy Island, and it once appeared in maps, but it was never there in real life. Australian scientists decided to solve the mystery once and for all by embarking on an adventure to find this elusive archipelago. But when they reached the coordinates, all they found was endless blue waves. It's like the island was playing a game of hide-and-seek with them. This story goes back to 1876. A whaling ship was crossing the area and reported an island. Whoever saw it said it was over 15 miles long north to south and around 3 miles wide, about the size of Manhattan, so not so tiny at all. But every time researchers went to visit the area, they found nothing. So in 1974, an official mission from New Caledonia declared that Sandy Island was simply not a thing and excluded it from all maps. People went on with their lives until they noticed that the island was appearing on Google Earth as a black blob. In 2012, another Australian expedition went out to check out the area to get some explanations. They had to write a eulogy for the long-lost island and explain what could have created this mess. For starters, mapping technology wasn't at its peak back in the 1900s. It was easy to get the coordinates wrong. Then there was the fact that the area is big on volcanic activities. It's likely that volcanic lava cooled down and created a raft of some kind. Let's say that the whaling ship went by, saw the volcanic raft, and thought it was land from a distance. But hey, it's just a guess. Humans have ventured far and wide across the globe, and it may have seemed at some point that we discovered each and every nook of our planet. But when Mount Liko popped up on Google Earth, scientists were overcome with excitement. This hidden gem in northern Mozambique is no ordinary rainforest. It's nestled inside a volcano. Determined to confirm the existence of this mysterious forest, experts assembled a team of top-notch scientists and specialists from around the world. The journey to Mount Liko was no walk in the park, with a daunting vertical rock climb standing between them and the forest. But after 6 years of planning and preparation, they were ready for the challenge. Once they got there, they saw it was even better than they imagined. The place was like a perfectly tended garden. The forest sounded unique and different from other rainforests. There were some insanely huge caterpillars that looked dangerous. And they even found ancient pots and evidence of an untouched human ecosystem. Ooh. Terra incognita means unknown land. And one of the largest unknown territories being uncovered today is the land beneath Antarctica's ice sheets. Below the snowy surface, there is an entirely new world of canyons, waterways, and lakes, which are now being mapped. One can't help but wonder, is there really liquid water below Antarctica's frozen surface? Yep. Water can exist without freezing due to pressure. The liquid water is the result of Earth's warm interior, and that's how we get things such as Lake Vostok. Now, you can't see it, but Lake Vostok is right here. Located in East Antarctica, it lies beneath 2.5 miles of thick ice. This huge lake is about 4,800 square miles. Humans could only discover it with the help of some top-notch technologies like seismic soundings and ice-penetrating radars. According to these scientists, it's likely that the lake has been there for up to 15 million years. Bhutan is on the map for, among other things, being the happiest country in all of Asia. But it kept a hidden gem for all these years, one of the world's tallest unclimbed mountains, Kunkar Pansum. Bhutan is enmeshed in the glorious Himalayan mountains. That's why the climbing community was beyond excited when they discovered an untouched mountain. Imagine being the first person to climb an unexplored peak. That would probably guarantee you a spot in the Guinness World Records for sure. The mountain has been untouched because of a Bhutanese law. For locals, the mountain peak is a sacred site, shrouded in mystery and legends. One of their beliefs is that the sacredness of climbing a mountain lies not in reaching its peak, but in truly communing with the mountain and enjoying the process. We got to admit, that is a bit of a newsflash for Westerners. If you're ever in the state of New York, make sure you check out the Aglo General Store. You'll have to drive somewhere around the Catskills to find a beautiful, grand, big nothing. Aglo is one of America's most famous paper towns, aka a fake town. But this case is different from Sandy Island. Aglo Town never existed, and it wasn't a mistake. You see, there's an old copyright practice amongst map makers. They add in paper towns so they can know when someone is simply copy-pasting their work. What they didn't expect is that this would get completely out of hand. Some say that one day a guy picked up a map at a gas station that had Aglo Town marked in it. The person decided to open a store over there and named it Aglo General Store. Some say the guy who opened the store faced a lawsuit from the map makers. Anyways, it only lasted enough years to become a national joke. Americans drove from all over the U.S. to get a picture of the town's fake welcome sign. And then we've got Bermeja Island, located in the Gulf of Mexico. This funky island appeared on many maps of the 16th and 17th centuries. It was probably drawn by Spanish explorers. Sure, the exact location varied from map to map, and its name sometimes appeared as Bermeja, but its existence was certain enough. The Bermeja Island was last seen in a 1921 Mexican map, and then, poof, it dropped out of the horizon altogether. People started talking and wondering, did the island sink? Was it destroyed? In 2009, 3 official investigations happened to search for the island. They used high-tech technologies to scour the Mexican seabed, but Bermeja was nowhere. Researchers had multiple guesses on what it could be. Let's delve on one of these ideas. The idea was probably made up by old-day explorers to mislead their enemies in search of land and gold. Well, that seems plausible. Now, let's take a look at Rio de Janeiro. Once, the city was filled with informal territories. These places are known as slums or favelas. They're like mini-cities inside the big city. Some favelas are known to be underprivileged territories, where dwellers don't get the same urban perks as other citizens, such as the sewage system and garbage pickups. These slums grew so quickly that the government didn't have time to keep track of their developments. So today, it's usually the dwellers themselves that name the streets and make do with whatever they have at their disposal. One of the biggest slums in Brazil is located in Rio de Janeiro, the so-called Hacienda, and it was only recognized as a neighborhood by the local government in the 1990s. Our own ocean floor is less mapped than Venus, Mars, and the Moon. In fact, 95% of our oceans are unexplored. Strange, right? We do have the available technology, which is mainly sonar soundings, sending wave sounds to the ocean bed and registering what they hear back. One of the main advantages of mapping the seabed more thoroughly would be to get more insight to marine hazards such as earthquakes, tsunamis, and volcanic eruptions. Plus, there are so many unidentified marine life. This could give us a great insight into preservation and discovering the true dynamics of our marine ecosystems.
It's 2010. You're in the Japanese waters of the Pacific Ocean, about 745 miles south of Tokyo and very close to the island of Iwo Jima. The sky is clear. There are almost no waves. A heavy, low rumble comes from somewhere deep under the sea. It scares away all the flying gulls. And then it gets quiet. Too quiet. It seems that even light waves don't dare to make a sound. Suddenly, a small bubble rises to the surface of the water. Then, thousands of air bubbles start moving up, one after another. The water begins to boil and heat up. Its temperature is so high that you can cook eggs or pasta in here. The boiling area grows to the size of a stadium. A huge amount of steam is released into the air. You can see an outline of some huge object through the boiling water. Then, everything stops. The water cools. The amount of bubbles goes down, and the surface of the ocean becomes calm again. That year, an underwater volcano erupted at that specific location. Fortunately, it didn't bring any serious consequences. In August 2021, the eruption repeated. But this time, everything wasn't limited to the bubbling water. The Japanese Coast Guard reported strong volcanic activity in the region. Hot steam and gases came out of the water and rose into the air to a height of 10 miles, which is about twice the height of Mount Everest. The huge awakened volcano began to slowly lift to the surface. If you took a helicopter ride above this place, you'd see more and more land coming out of the water. This is not just a volcano, it's a whole island in the shape of a horseshoe. And this is just the beginning. Seismologists say this island is the tip of a huge volcano. It fills the sky with smoke and ash. The air temperature is rising. Scientists continue to monitor the situation. They believe the volcano can completely get out of the water. Nobody knows what consequences this may have. This isn't the first island that has appeared in the waters of Japan. Underwater volcanoes have erupted several times over the past century. One of the most surprising cases occurred in 2013. That year, a small piece of land was formed next to the already existing island. The underwater volcano that emerged from the water began to grow slowly. At some moment, it connected to the island. After 2 years, the area of this island increased by 12 times compared to the original size. Smoke is always pouring out of this place, and its surface is filled with red-hot lava flows. The volcano is unstable and isn't going to calm down. Such phenomena occur not only off the coast of Japan. In the 1960s, a volcano awoke on the southern coast of Iceland. For 3 whole years, it was coming to the surface and had formed an island by 1967. They called it Surtsey. Unlike the Japanese islands, this is where the volcanic eruptions ended. Now the island is one of the most inaccessible places on the planet. Only a few scientists in the world have permission to walk around this place. They want to learn how the plant and animal life of the island are formed without human intervention. This is a unique event, and here's why. Underwater volcanoes differ in their behavior from land volcanoes. They don't explode and don't release lava flows upwards. A huge amount of water above them creates high pressure. As soon as the magma gets out, the water immediately lowers it to the seafloor. Underwater eruptions don't normally cause any changes on the ocean surface. So, millions of gallons of lava sink to the bottom, cool down, and solidify around the volcano. This lava forms a thick layer of Earth's rock. To make an island appear on the surface, an underwater volcano needs a lot of magma. The next eruption creates another thick layer. Millions of years pass, and passive lava flows form mountains. Constant eruptions increase the height of the seabed. Layer by layer, the cooled lava rises higher and higher, and then, one day, it appears on the surface in the form of an island. Often, underwater volcanoes don't reach the surface and fall asleep forever. Such volcanoes are called seamounts. The tectonic activity also affects the formation of islands. The volcano has a source of magma that comes from the mantle of the planet. The tectonic plate is moving, and a volcano is placed on it, so the plate can lead the volcano away from the source of magma. When a volcano rises, it can simply move aside and no longer erupt. From the outside, the volcanic islands look like an apocalypse, lava spraying in different directions, smog and ash filling the sky. But in fact, volcanoes are not about destruction, but the creation of new life. Lava is any hot metal, but the natural lava flowing out of volcanoes is called magma. When it appears on the surface of the ground, various gases and acids instantly evaporate from it, and magma becomes lava. But underground, it's magma. These molten metals contain trace elements of almost all chemical substances that exist in nature. They enrich the land they're flowing in. Ash is also filled with many different elements. The lava hardens, the ash settles, and this creates favorable conditions for the appearance of a rich ecosystem. It can take millions of years to develop, though. The simplest bacteria appear. They feed on chemical elements coming from the volcano. When you have favorable conditions for bacteria, you get favorable conditions for bigger life forms. Birds flying by also help to develop the new ecosystem. They build nests on the island, bring tree seeds and plant spores from the continents and other islands. All this enriches life on the volcano. Volcanoes are isolated places, so unique species of animals, insects, and bacteria can appear only there and can't be found anywhere else on the planet. However, if the volcano wakes up, it can also destroy the ecosystem. The entire island can be covered with ash and simply lose all vegetation. But then, on the scorched ground, life can appear again. Hundreds of islands around the world appeared because of the eruptions of underwater volcanoes. Hawaii, Indonesia, and Iceland have them on their territory. Imagine that people settled on a similar volcanic island and built a city there. And one day, the volcano woke up. It once happened 200 miles south of Tokyo. People built a beautiful town right in the center of an active volcano on the island of Aogashima. In May 1785, the catastrophe began. That day was sunny, and no one could imagine what tragedy was approaching them. At some point, thousands of birds took to the air and flew away from the island. Then, the ground began to shake. A heavy, low sound came out of the town depths. Streams of smoke were coming out of the crater of a green volcano. The volcano was throwing dirt, large stones, and various debris into the sky. The disaster lasted for several weeks. Since then, more than 200 years have passed, and the volcano has never woken up again. The town was rebuilt after the disaster. Now, this place is so great, people don't want to leave, despite the risk of a new eruption. More and more residents are coming to the island. There are many thermal springs, and the waters around the island are rich in fish. But the volcano may wake up at any moment. Fortunately, meteorological and seismological services monitor the situation. A lake can also form inside the volcano, but you shouldn't swim in it. In Indonesia, on the island of Java, there's a volcano with a crater inside. It's filled with turquoise water. The magma inside the volcano consists of many molten metals and chemical compounds, and the lake gets these substances. The volcano emits sulfur dioxide gases that combine with the metallic lake. This gives the water its strong acidity and turquoise color. The steam coming from the lake is acid. When it combines with air, it ignites. This is visible at night. Sulfur accumulations flare up and illuminate everything around.
The Amazon River, the boat, and dense jungle on both sides. All is silent. Only the engine is revving, and you look around nervously under the earnest gaze of the Peruvian guide. Suddenly, the man smiles and points ahead. This is it. You've finally arrived at Iquitos. The city is hidden deep within the Amazon rainforest. On one side, Iquitos is surrounded by water, and on the other lies thick, impenetrable rainforest as far as the eye can see, making this city extremely difficult to reach. First, you had to fly to Peru's capital, Lima, a vibrant coastal city. From there, you traveled by bus through Peru's vast jagged mountains before being plunged into the heart of the Amazon rainforest. 3 days into this bus journey, you reached a small town where the road suddenly stopped. At over 140 square miles, Iquitos is the largest continental city in the world that cannot be reached by road. You're still over 200 miles away from Iquitos, so from here you take a boat ride along the hot, humid Amazon River before finally reaching the remote city 5 days after you left Lima. When you arrive in the city, you notice many of the houses are built on tall stilts. This is because, in the springtime, the river surrounding Iquitos swells up, submerging parts of the city in water. For this, Iquitos has been nicknamed the Venice of the Amazon. The stilted houses are tall enough to avoid the murky waters of the Amazon River. You hear loud buzzing coming from all around the city. It sounds like a gang of bikers have arrived. In reality, these are motocarrios. There are very few cars in Iquitos. Instead, they have motorcycles with small passenger cabins attached to them. There are around 45,000 of these things whizzing around Iquitos, making the city very noisy. Your trip to the most isolated places has just begun. So, you head to Norway and arrive in the capital city Oslo. Immediately, you hop on another plane. After a 3-hour flight, you land at the world's northernmost public airport, Longyearbyen. You step off the plane to see a small and colorful town enclosed by snow-topped mountains. There's no settlement further to the north than this. Longyearbyen translates to the Long Year Town, named after its American founder, coal miner John Longyear. You take a walk along the coast of the small town. The water is a beautiful crystal blue. You decide to dip your toe in to test it out. Ow! Bad idea. The average temperature of the water here is 32 degrees, making it ice cold. In the distance, you can make out a fuzzy white creature. It's a polar bear. In fact, it's a group of them. In Longyearbyen, polar bears famously outnumber humans. Around 3,000 of these animals populate the area compared to the human population of 2,300. Finally, the sun sets. You grab a blanket and sit back to take in the stunning view of the northern lights. Now, imagine you're walking in the scorching heat across Egypt's Great Sand Sea. You've been walking for miles, hours, days even, dreaming of water, greenery, and a place to rest, when suddenly you come across a small settlement with olive groves, palm trees, and even freshwater springs. This isn't a heat-induced mirage. It's the Siwa Oasis, an Egyptian city of 23,000 people and a miracle of nature. You travel here by flying to Egypt's capital, Cairo, and then embarking on a lengthy and desolate bus ride across the desert. When you finally spot some greenery amongst the sand, you have reached the Siwa Oasis. After refreshing yourself in the cool waters of the springs, you explore the city further and come across ancient ruins. This city has existed since 10,000 BCE, and many historical remnants can still be found there today. Amongst these ruins, you notice there are newer buildings. These are where the modern-day Siwi people live. You spend some time with the Siwi, a friendly and unique community of Egyptians. They tell you all about their city. The Siwa Oasis is located in the middle of the Sahara Desert, and due to its harsh climate, it's one of the most remote cities in the world. You notice how dry the air is and how scorching the sun feels. Reaching highs of 118 degrees Fahrenheit, this heat makes the Siwa Oasis a difficult place to live. It's time to travel to a more balanced climate. You head northeast and arrive in Russia's capital, Moscow. From there, you take a flight east again, traveling further and further across Russia until you're closer to Alaska than to Moscow. You've reached the city of Petropavlovsk, which translates to City of Peter and Paul. The first thing you see are giant mountains surrounding the city, cutting it off from the rest of the world. These mountains are in fact volcanoes. In this far eastern part of Russia, there are more than 300 volcanoes, including 29 active ones. These volcanoes stop any roads from reaching Petropavlovsk. The city depends on flights and boats to import supplies. You turn away from the volcanoes to stare out at the blue, shimmering ocean. The water looks nice, so you head down to the beach where a crowd of sea lions are sunbathing along the sand. Petropavlovsk is home to incredibly diverse wildlife. Just off the shore, you can see a whale fin poking out of the water. You explore the city's diverse landscape. You go to one of the city's ski resorts and spend the day on the slopes. Then you hike up a rocky path to the base of one of the city's many volcanoes. Finally, it's time to relax on a boat tour around the island to see the city's famous Three Brothers rock formation. Feeling inspired, you travel to another volcanic land, Chile's Easter Island. The island doesn't have a harbor and only one airline flies to the remote land, so you travel an entire day to Santiago, Chile. Then you climb aboard a small plane to fly to Easter Island. You walk among the high cliffs of the barren island and come across its famous monuments. These are giant, mysterious statues of human heads. They're called moai and were carved by the local people around 800 years ago. You inspect the earth beneath your feet. It looks and feels very dry. Easter Island consists of 3 ancient volcanoes. The volcanic soil makes it very difficult to grow crops or vegetation. Some of the city's trees were cleared hundreds of years ago to make way for the stone monuments, giving the island the empty look it has today. You embark on a boat ride 1,100 miles west from Easter Island. You reach a small green land floating in the Pacific Ocean. This is Pitcairn Island. You might recall that this place played a major role in the mutiny on the Bounty. You come down from the boat and begin your journey to reach Adamstown, the center of the island where its 43 inhabitants live. To reach Adamstown, you hike the Hill of Difficulty, a steep and rocky 200-foot climb to the top of the island. Now that you've finally made it here, you can explore the diverse and unique nature of the land. Pitcairn Island is home to the largest marine reserve in the world. You take a snorkeling trip and swim alongside all kinds of exotic fish. You explore vibrant coral reefs and even catch sight of a rare humpback whale. Dreaming of the great days of the old Wild West, you decide to travel to Supai, Arizona. To get to this Native American settlement and fragment of the past, you drive along America's famous Route 66. You stop, seemingly in the middle of nowhere with only desert land as far as the eye can see. Then you follow an 8-mile walking trail to reach Supai. You hike down into the Grand Canyon, almost 3,000 feet deep. You come across a stunning waterfall spilling over the cliffs of the canyon. This is Havasu Falls, a popular tourist spot, famous for its vivid blue-green water. After a further mile's hike, you finally reach Supai. Over 200 members of the Havasupai Indian tribe reside in the small town. It's often referred to as the most remote town in the United States. To your left, you see several mules making their way across town with packages on their backs. Because no roads lead to this small settlement, mail is delivered by a mule train. Without it, it would take the average mail carrier a 16-hour hike to complete this route. You walk around the area and come across many more towering blue waterfalls. The untouched nature and great views of the Grand Canyon make the long hike worthwhile. After a beautiful sunset, nighttime falls, and there are no lights for miles. The land is lit up by the countless stars shining overhead.
Fraser Island sits off the coast of sunny Queensland, Australia. But don't fall for its beauty. It's home to the most dangerous beach in the world. There's nowhere on the island to seek medical attention. If you do run into danger, you're on your own. Dingo attacks are super common here. If you don't know what a dingo is, it looks like an adorable dog. But beware, this wild breed is extremely dangerous. And the dingo's gnashing teeth aren't the only thing to be scared of. The seas around the island are swimming with great white sharks. There's jellyfish in the water too. Fraser Island is home to some of the world's most dangerous kinds, including the Portuguese bluebottle. One sting from its venomous tentacle is enough to take down an adult human. Even if you manage to avoid the creatures on the island, the sea itself is perilous. The waters are incredibly rough and have powerful riptides. These are strong currents that will pull you away from the shore. And remember, there are no lifeguards to come to your rescue if you get in trouble. Even the sand is dangerous. Car rollovers in the thick dunes happen all the time. It's definitely best to swap your car for a dune buggy. Travelers also often drive down the dunes straight into the lakes below, but the lakes are incredibly shallow, which is not very safe. Fraser Island is also known for its beautiful lookout points, but you'll need to watch your step. You might feel on top of the world, but stay well away from the edges as jagged rocks and crashing waves line the shore below. There's an island in Brazil known as Snake Island, which is equally dangerous. I wonder what the hazard could be here. It's home to thousands of golden lancehead vipers, which are one of the most venomous snakes on the planet. They grow to over 20 inches long, and their fast-acting venom melts the flesh from around their bites. There are around 4,000 snakes on the tiny 106-acre isle. Snake Island has become so dangerous that the Brazilian authorities had to ban everyone from going there. For years, the only human inhabitants to brave the island were a lighthouse keeper and his family. But local legend says that one night a group of snakes crawled in through a window to attack, and the family was never seen again. Known as the gas mask town, the island of Miyake-jima is not one to visit in a hurry. It's home to a fiery, active volcano that has erupted several times over the past few years. There were several massive eruptions leading to the spread of a highly poisonous gas across the island. Residents are now required to carry gas masks at all times, and a terrifying alarm blares across the island whenever the poison levels get too high. The island is also in the middle of the Devil's Sea. Ships mysteriously vanish in the area, and experts have no idea why. The North Sentinel Island is home to a remote and unwelcoming tribe. They lived alone on the island without any modern technology or contact with the outside world for over 60,000 years. And that's just the way they like it. They've been known to fire arrows at anyone who attempts to enter the island. There are many stories of people visiting the island, and they are never seen again. It's not ghoulish ghosts or slithering snakes that you have to worry about on the Caribbean island of Saba. It's hurricanes. The tiny island has been hit by more severe hurricanes than anywhere in the world over the last 150 years. There have even been 7 tropical cyclones, which is an intense circular storm. The winds in these storms can reach 254 kilometers an hour. Try standing up in that. You'll also struggle to find a pilot who'll even land on the island. It's incredibly dangerous not because of the winds, but because it's home to the shortest runway in the world. It's only 440 yards long. 2 huge rocky ridges surround the runway, so there's no room for mistakes. The Kilauea beaches of Hawaii used to be one of the most dangerous in the world. The Kilauea volcano has been almost consistently erupting for the past 35 years, spewing red-hot lava into the surrounding waters. The water temperatures have even passed boiling point as a result of the lava. Happily, it's no longer active. While the island of Bikini Atoll might sound like the perfect summer vacation destination, it's most certainly not. The problem is that this place has dangerously high radiation levels, and the locals had to leave it. Although the island was declared safe in the 90s, its original inhabitants have refused to return. The lack of fishing in the area has also led to a massive increase in sharks who swim the waters in search of their next meal. Strangely, the corals and reefs are thriving. From the distance, Ramree Island looks idyllic. White sand, swaying palms. But beware. They say thousands of hungry saltwater crocodiles used to lurk there, ready to strike at any time. The exact number of those animals was unknown, and some scientists claim that there are quite a few of them right now. I'd stay well clear of the island though. I don't really feel like becoming crocodile food. Skeleton Coast in Namibia is appropriately named as the harsh landscape and lack of water make life almost impossible. Whale carcasses, turtle shells, and elephant rib cages litter the shore. If that isn't bad enough, lions and hyenas patrol the beach in search of their next meal. The surrounding waters are just as dangerous, as they are home to 11 different species of shark. Many sailors have become lost on this coast and have never been seen again. Cape Tribulation in Australia also lives up to its name as it is packed, full of dangers. Swimmers have to wear special stinger suits because the water is teeming with stinging jellyfish. Saltwater crocodiles also hide in the water, but they don't make a suit to keep you safe from those. It's not just the jellyfish that sting. The area is covered in stinging trees. The trees have jagged leaves that give the crocs' teeth a run for their money. On land, there's angry cassowary birds. There are flightless birds that are the same size as an ostrich. They have sharp talons that can easily slice through skin. The Utterkleiv beach in Norway is one of the best places to see the northern lights, but you'll be lucky if you survive more than one night there. The seas surrounding the island can reach 46 degrees Fahrenheit, and that's just in the summer. It probably feels like swimming in ice cream. For years, Gansby Beach has remained a habitat for the most dangerous creatures on the planet. Sharks are particular fans of its waters, and the coastal stretch is known as the Great White Shark Capital. The sharks are attracted to the 60,000 sea lions that flock to the beach every year. Not just shark food, wild sea lions can be unpredictable and aggressive towards humans. Comoro Islands are the worst vacation destination for those who don't really like mosquitoes. The place is swarming with the little guys. Locals say all the water on the island must be contaminated because of them. So they like to sterilize water before drinking, making ice, and even brushing their teeth. If you're really into coconuts, there's one place you should probably go to grab some. I'm talking Danger Island. Yep, it's the real name of one of the islands in the Chagos archipelago. It shouldn't scare you off though. The major problem it has is parking. I mean, safe anchorage for those who come there. Finally, while it may sound dreamy, you're probably going to want to avoid the beaches of the Amazon. Sharp-toothed red-bellied piranhas, anacondas, and electric eels are just some of the beach's regular residents. It has one of the widest varieties of animal species on the planet, including the Amazonian giant centipede, which has a poisonous bite. It's not just the animals of the Amazon that you have to watch out for. Strychnos and curare are the two Amazonian plants that are super poisonous.
The Amazon River travels through 9 South American countries at a length of over 4,000 miles. Still, it's impossible to cross it by a bridge. With the river being the main highway, traveling through this dense forest, and so few areas populated around the river, there's just no reason to have one. The river can rise up to 30 feet, and the river crossings that were only 3 miles wide can expand to over 30 miles in just a few short weeks in certain spots, making a bridge nearly impossible to build here. In New Zealand, in the coastal town of Mauriki, there are huge spherical boulders. Some rocks are 6.5 feet tall and weigh about 7 tons, as much as 10 cows. Ooh, there's a 10-cow boulder. Maori legend has it that these rocks are from the remains of the goods from a large shipwreck that happened hundreds of years ago. From a more scientific perspective, it's sand and gravel combined to form these giant boulders. Waves and winds give them a smooth, round appearance over time. The whole process might take millions of years. Indonesia's Kaiwan Ijen volcano is famous for a stunning turquoise-colored lake sitting at the top of the peak, but don't dip in. It's an acid lake. But its scariest part is the sulfuric gases leaking out when lava flows freely, reaching temperatures hotter than 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. When those gases come in contact with the air, they combust into a spectacular electric blue flame. That's why the volcano has blue lava. The island of Surtsey, south of Iceland, was formed over 50 years ago by a volcanic eruption. It all began back in 1963 when a powerful volcanic eruption created one of the youngest islands on the planet. All sorts of bacteria, fungi, and molds began taking over the island, leading to numerous other animals finding their way here, like seals and birds. Birds and ocean waves deposited seeds all over the island. Sadly, the island's getting smaller now because of water and wind erosion. Located off the coast of Brazil, there's an island called… I'm a bit rusty on my Portuguese, so here it is on the screen. It looks perfectly untouched and pristine. Bad news? Dangerous snakes overrun it completely, so take a doctor with you in case you want to go there. Over 4,000 of the golden lancehead vipers inhabit this island. These 3-foot-long snakes are among the most venomous in the entire world. I think I'll skip that. Landing down under, you can see the Opera House, Uluru, lots of kangaroos, and catch the strangest wave of the world, Wave Rock in Western Australia. It's not made of water, but stone. It can be up to 50 feet tall and almost 300 feet long. It's especially incredible after rains in winter, when the Western Australian wildflowers fill up the entire landscape. In Atlanta, there's a World of Coca-Cola museum. The formula for the secret recipe is in a large security vault, heavily guarded at all times. Only a handful of people can get through those vault doors. Since its creation in 1886, the company has kept it a secret for only the most honest employees. In 2006, a former worker tried to sell the formula to Pepsi, only for Pepsi to call the police and inform Coca-Cola. The Polka Dot Lakes is a must for anyone who is in British Columbia. After the summer's scorching heat evaporates the lake's water, it leaves behind yellow, blue, and green water spots. These pools are full of all sorts of minerals, like sodium, calcium, and magnesium sulfates that get concentrated in the pools. You can't get too close or even dip your feet into them. A fence protects the entire lake with a sign about how culturally and ecologically sensitive the area is. In Death Valley, California, there's a mystery of the sailing stones. Since the early 1900s, the mystery of how all these stones were seemingly moving by themselves across the desert floor baffled everyone. Some believe that the rocks move by thin pieces of ice around the stones pushed by winds after winter. No one ever saw any of these rocks moving until 2014. Scientists set time-lapse recorders, and the footage showed the rocks sliding along the ground over time. The marble caves in Chile, located in the beautiful area of Patagonia, formed from over 6,000 years of waves wearing down the rocks. The crystal blue walls reflect the vibrant turquoise water, making it perfect for kayaking. Walking in Chestnut Ridge Park in New York, one can see an eternal flame. What makes this one stand out, though, is it's underneath a waterfall. Occasionally, the flame will go out for short periods, but it will light up again. Sometimes it's thanks to certain hikers along the way. If you ever stop your car on a magnetic hill in New Brunswick, Canada, you'll see the car might start rolling backwards up the hill, all by itself. While it looks like it's moving the wrong way, this is just an illusion. There are several hills like this all around the world. What looks like an incline is the opposite, all because there's no horizon for perspective. The brightest bioluminescent bay in the world, called Puerto Mosquito, is located off the coast of Puerto Rico. The bay is named for the pirate Roberto Cofresi and his small boat El Mosquito, not after those annoying insects. During the summer months, you'll have glassy water at night with millions of tiny microorganisms bumping into each other and emitting blue light. The Chocolate Hills in the Philippines is a group of unusually shaped hills located in the middle of the island of Bohol in the Philippines. There are 1,000 to 2,000 discovered so far. They have nothing to do with chocolate at all, but they resemble the color after the dry season, when the grass turns from green to brown. In the northeastern part of Thailand, 466 miles away from Bangkok, is a 75-million-year-old rock formation sticking right out of the mountains. Their shapes look just like a pod of whales swimming together. No wonder this place is called Three Whale Rocks. Millions of years ago, this area was just a desert, but this land has changed quite dramatically during this time. These sandstone mountains were lifted up by plate tectonics, that's the shifting of the crust layers, called lithosphere, and erosion by the Mekong River, resulting in the strangely shaped rock formations we see today. Salar de Uyuni in Bolivia is the world's largest salt flat. At 4,050 square miles in size, it's twice as large as Grand Canyon National Park. After winter has passed, the salt lake is transformed into a beautiful giant sky-reflecting mirror between September and May. With salt all the way to the horizon, it creates an illusion of endlessness. The thin layer of water left over from ice melting creates a shimmering effect of the sky, making it one of the best places to visit in the world. The Catatumbo River in Venezuela might be the stormiest place in the world, with nearly 300 storm days a year. The lightning storms are so consistent, and they're predicted 3 months in advance. During the wet season in October, you might see 30 lightning flashes in a single minute. At sunset, strong winds flow around the 3 surrounding mountains, forming storm clouds over the water. When the water droplets of humid air collide with ice crystals from the cold air, the static charges cause a lightning storm that happens nearly every night. Off the southern tip of Japan lies the Yonaguni Formation. Archaeologists believe that the monument belongs to a fabled Pacific civilization, like Atlantis, that vanished beneath the waves thousands of years ago. If it's truly a lost civilization or just nature having a little fun, this is the site to dive into. Features inside the structure resemble stonework like castles, temples, and a stadium, connected by roads and what seems to be large walls all the way around. There are even marks in the stone that appear to show quarry work, faded faces, and rocks sculpted into animal shapes. Some scientists believe that the symmetry of the stones is not as straight as reported. It appears solid rock rather than carved blocks weathered down by all the water over many years. Plitvice Lakes National Park in Croatia is an interconnected chain of waterfalls, the tallest being 230 feet, and underground water channels, creating natural dams and lakes in such a picturesque environment. Found in the deep woodlands surrounded by meadows brimming with wildflowers, brown bears, gray wolves, lynx, deer, and plenty of rare bird species for birdwatchers call these 115 square miles of the national park home. In 2020, there are islands on our planet that have not been touched by the hand of modern man, not even his fingers. Nature in these places has remained unchanged for thousands of years. What if people lived on one of these islands? They wouldn't know about civilization's progressive benefits or have seen a modern person. This island actually exists, and traveling to it is unlawful and involves many dangers. North Sentinel Island is located in India in the Bay of Bengal. If you want to get there, you won't succeed, because any travel to this place is prohibited by law since the middle of the 20th century. The Indian Coast Guard prevents any attempts to get there, but the law is not the only thing that will stop you on the way. Imagine sailing a small boat towards this island. The waters are crystal clear. You spot passing fish and beautiful coral reefs. Ahead, you can see the island shape. It looks like paradise. You're so impressed by the beautiful view of this place that you don't notice a few dots appearing on the shore. As you sail closer, something whizzes past you and falls into the water. It's an arrow. The next arrow hits the hull of the boat. The dots on the shore are people, the local tribe Sentinelese. They stand with spears and bows and shout something at you in a strange language. They make it clear with gestures that you should get out of this place. They throw spears at you and fire arrows. Well, that's another clue, huh? Fortunately, you manage to get away. Sentinelese guards their island in such an aggressive way. They don't invite anyone to the island and voluntarily isolate themselves from the rest of the world. Even when a helicopter flew to North Sentinel, the tribe threw spears and arrows at it. The authorities forbid approaching this island because it's unsafe for tourists, you think, and to protect the islanders from the dangers of modern man. People can easily bring disease to the island and infect the inhabitants. The locals may not have immunity to even the flu or a simple cold. Despite all the prohibitions and threats to life, many people have tried to get there. They wanted to make friends with the tribe, and sometimes they did. In 1880, Officer Maurice Vidal Portman went to the island shore and found that it was surrounded by a coral reef and limestone. On the island, there was a noble soil, which is ideal for growing coconut palms. Portman found several villages on the island, but didn't visit the locals and left this green paradise. Often researchers gave the islanders gifts in the form of caught fish. The locals accepted it, asked for more, but still did not allow anyone to approach their home. Making friends with the natives was also tricky because they communicate in a complicated language. But over several decades, modern people managed to establish contact. In 1991, one of the locals approached a boat that sailed to the island and took the gift. In the same year, the islanders boarded a boat and accepted bags of coconuts from the anthropology team. This was one of the last positive interactions with the tribe. For centuries, sentinels have lived on their own, far from civilization, and India's government wants this to continue. So there. Another island is also beautiful but much more unsafe. One mysterious small green island is found 25 miles off the coast of Brazil. It also represents paradise. Traces of modern man are present here in the form of a lighthouse, but there are no people inside. Sometimes the Coast Guard comes to the lighthouse to check whether everything is okay and whether there are no strangers on the island. People are not allowed on this island for their own good. The only inhabitants of this place are snakes. The island is home to about 4,000 species of these reptiles. They hang on trees and slither on the ground. Oh boy. They have no enemies and feed on birds that visit the island for recreation during a long flight. Oops. But the worst thing is that these snakes are among the most venomous in the world. The golden lancehead snake is a unique species that lives only in this place. Snake Island was once part of Brazil's mainland, but 10,000 years ago, the sea level rose and separated this place, turning it into an island. Animals were completely isolated here, and for thousands of years, snakes became the top of the food chain. Because there was no other prey on the island except birds, evolution gave these snakes a potent venom to catch prey with a single bite. Well, moving on. Next is a terrifying island located in the Xochimilco Canal, 11 miles from Mexico City. There are no venomous animals or a hostile local tribe, and the island is not forbidden to visit. But most likely, you'll want to leave as soon as you arrive. Creepy dolls of various sizes are suspended in trees and old buildings all over the island. In the 50s, one of the residents of Mexico City moved alone to this island and began to hang it with dolls. For decades, he decorated this place, although it's difficult to call it decoration. He found dolls and dumps in canals around the island. The hanging dolls looked rather strange and attracted many tourists. But over time, the dolls got older. They were covered with moss, turned green, and rotted. The dolls' faces have deformed and taken eerie shapes. But the worst thing is that the locals say they've seen these dolls come to life at night. Ew. Now for Bovit Island, one of the most mysterious islands in the world. This island is the most isolated place in the world. It's located in the South Atlantic Ocean, 1,600 miles away from South Africa and 1,100 miles from Antarctica. A perfect location for an introvert. It's challenging to reach the island, and typically you can only do so from some large ships passing by. Almost the entire island is covered by a glacier, and in its center lies a volcanic crater. The only permanent residents of the island are penguins and seals. The island was discovered by a French explorer in 1739. However, the coordinates of this place were not recorded. For the next 69 years, the island was hidden. In the early 19th century, it was finally rediscovered. But a human foot came ashore only in 1927. Hopefully, it was still attached to some explorer. In the mid-20th century, people decided to build a weather station there. As soon as the researchers sailed to the island, they discovered something strange. They found a lifeboat in a small lagoon among the seals. It was in good condition and could still sail. The researchers found oars and an empty copper buoyancy tank not far from the boat. There were no markings or emblems on the boat. It seemed that a ship was wrecked and the sailors escaped by this boat. However, no human tracks were found on the island. Who owned this boat and what happened to those who sailed on it remains a mystery. Now, let's end our trip with an island that is completely safe and even pleasant. What a surprise! Pig Beach is an island located in the Bahamas. This is not the official name of this place, but it's called that because of the local swimming pigs. The island is inhabited by these animals. They sunbathe on the beach, walk through the jungle, and beg for food from tourists. But the cool thing is, they can all swim really well. Cute pink and brown piglets splash in the water and grunt, begging for food. Thanks to feeding by tourists and caring locals, these animals manage to survive on the island. You can stay at a hotel on a nearby island and visit the pigs by boat. Nobody knows precisely where the pigs came from. According to one legend, the pigs survived a shipwreck and swam to this island. You can find several cats and goats there as well. Animal Farm, anyone? Imagine you're a movie director looking for beautiful landscapes to shoot a movie. You walk along the picturesque Paraná River and find a perfectly round island in its delta. It's slightly larger than a soccer field. You come back a few days later and see that the island has changed its position. It's moved a little to the side and spun around its axis. This is what happened to Argentinian director Sergio Newspiller in 2016. He discovered an island that constantly moves around its axis. He called it the Eye. If you look at it from a bird's eye view, you'll see that it's similar to a slowly moving eye. It's like nature itself is looking at you. The doctor forgot about his initial movie idea and decided to make a documentary about this island. You can find the Eye in the northeastern part of Argentina, or you can open Google Maps and type El Hoyo to see it. No one had known much about this place before the director found it. Perhaps there are many such moving islands on the planet. If you look at satellite images of this area, you can see other similar pieces of land inside lakes, but they're not so round and don't rotate. Surprisingly, scientists haven't yet solved the secret of the bizarre island. The most popular theory says that underground wells create strong water flows and change the current that pushes the island from side to side. When the Eye collides with the ground, it bounces off like a ball, causing parts of its muddy shores to break off. But not everyone looks for a scientific explanation for this natural phenomenon. Some locals believe that the island is part of some kind of technology created by space civilizations. Our next stop is the smallest island in the world. No one can even step on it because of its size. So, here's Vancouver Island in the Canadian province of British Columbia. Fairy Lake is located here. Look at the water. You may not notice the island at first. Technically, it's not even an island. It's just a piece of log sticking out of the water. This log is covered with moss and grass. But the most incredible thing is that a tiny Douglas fir grows on this piece of wood. The photo of this tree has won many awards and became famous worldwide. It shows how desperately nature can strive for survival. Every day, many tourists sail around this island and get inspiration from it. The next island looks ominous and lifeless. It's the perfect place to build a hut and write horror novels using an old typewriter. The place is called Ball's Pyramid. It's located in the waters of Australia in the Caspian Sea. You can see this colossal fin sticking out of the water from afar. This is a sharp stone ridge with a height of 1,800 feet, almost twice the size of the Eiffel Tower, in the center of an uninhabited volcanic island. It's dangerous to approach the place and step ashore because of its slippery stone surface. Scientists come here with special equipment and probably some good boots with traction. The purpose of their visits is a mystery that lies in the heart of the ridge. It was first discovered in 1788. The navigators who found it considered the island lifeless, and so it was believed for more than 200 years. But then, in 2001, people decided to examine the place again. A group of scientists arrived there and found one of the rarest insects in the world. At the height of more than 100 feet, a small bush grew. A colony of land lobsters, also called walking sausages, was hiding there. These are critters from the family of stick insects. They look pretty creepy, since each of them is about 6 inches in size, which is the average size of a sausage. The bodies of these six-paw beetles are covered with a hard brown shell. Scientists found 27 insects, and their population keeps growing. These creatures were considered extinct at the beginning of the 20th century. Scientists still don't know how these beetles got to this remote, harsh place and how they managed to survive there. The next unusual place is probably the most isolated and one of the most mysterious in the world. Welcome to Bouvet Island, located in the southern Atlantic Ocean, 1,600 miles from the coast of South Africa and 1,100 miles from Antarctica. It's possible to get there only if some big ship is passing by. An ordinary motorboat won't be able to reach this place because of the cold temperature and icebergs. The island is completely covered with ice and has a volcano crater in its center. You won't find anyone living there except penguins and seals. One French explorer discovered the island in 1739, but then its coordinates were lost. People found this place again only at the beginning of the 19th century. But people set foot on the shore of this island for the first time only in 1927. Then, closer to the 50s, they decided to build a weather station on it. Researchers came there and found something strange on the icy surface of the island. And it wasn't due to the penguins and seals. It was a lifeboat lying in a small lagoon among the seals. It was in good condition. Not far from the boat, they found oars and an empty copper container. Perhaps some ship went down nearby, and the survivors reached the island in this boat. But the researchers found no traces of people. Until now, this boat remains a big mystery. How about visiting an island that doesn't exist? It's in the South Pacific Ocean near Australia and New Caledonia. It's called Sandy Island. It was first discovered in 1876. Researchers began putting it on maps at the beginning of the 20th century. But when people arrived at the specified coordinates, they found no island. So by 1970, people had removed it from all the maps released at that time. Then, in 2012, Sandy Island appeared again, this time on Google Maps. The researchers came there, but still found nothing. Maybe it had gone underwater. With the help of echolocation devices, they explored the seabed, but didn't notice any signs of an island. They found out that it appeared on the maps because of human error when printed cards were being transferred to digital ones. The mistake was quickly corrected, but a trace of it remained. If you enter these coordinates into Google Maps, you'll see a mysterious black spot in the middle of the ocean. And that's precisely where I am narrating this story. Nah. How did people discover it in 1876? Most likely it was an underwater volcano that woke up and spewed some magma out. In the cold water, it solidified and turned into pumice. So people on that ship must have noticed huge floating pieces of volcanic rock and mistook them for an island. Our next island could be a new continent, but turned into nothing. At the beginning of the 20th century, famous marine explorer Robert Peary, the first in history to reach the North Pole, went on an expedition to the northernmost Canadian island, Ellesmere. He was on the shore, looking through his binoculars at the ocean. In the distance, amid the white snow, he noticed the white peaks of a giant island stretching across the horizon. The traveler didn't have enough food and fuel to get there and check out this land. He wrote the coordinates in his diary and went back to the mainland. Together with other researchers, they concluded that he had found not just an island, but a new continent. A few years later, Robert Peary organized a new expedition to that place. But this time, he couldn't find the mysterious icy land. The ship stayed in cold waters for several days, drifting from side to side. The crew was running out of food and fuel. They were about to go back, but then they noticed those snowy peaks again. The joy of discovery was quickly replaced by disappointment. Those peaks were just fog. Under the influence of cold air and the sun's rays, the fog looked like an island at a certain angle. When the ship approached it, the island dissolved like a mirage. Oh well.
Okay, let's play a little guessing game, shall we? Can you name the 6th largest river on Earth in terms of volume? That's the amount of water that flows through a waterway. The first couple of rivers are easy to list. Number 1, of course, is the Amazon River in South America. Then we have the Congo in Africa, and the Ganges in India. Feel free to name all the rivers on the planet. You won't get any closer to the answer. Why? Because this river is not on the surface, but underneath the waves of the Black Sea. In 2010, a team of scientists discovered this river while studying the Bosphorus Strait in Turkey. Sonar scanning revealed a channel at the bottom of the Black Sea. The channel had water flowing through it. It turned out that at places, it's 115 feet deep. That's 3 times as tall as your average telephone pole. This flow of water acts like a real river. It has rapids and waterfalls, and its volume is 350 times greater than that of the River Thames in London. Talk about a strong undercurrent. If it was a surface river, it would really be in the top 10. Bad news for the Madeira River in Bolivia and Brazil, the present number 6. But how did this underwater river form? The answer lies in the amazing features of the Black Sea. It gets its water from 2 main sources. The first are the rivers that flow into it, like the Danube, Dnieper, and Don. Lot of D's there. But more importantly, they are all freshwater waterways. On the other side, quite literally, there is the Mediterranean, and it's salty, like a lot. When this salt water gets inside the Black Sea, it goes straight to the bottom. You see, fresh water is lighter than salt water. This creates stratification. It's a fancy term that simply means that the 2 types of water don't mix together. Salt water has a higher density, so it drops right down to the bottom. If you want to see how that works, you can do an experiment at home. Pour mineral water into 1 cup and salt water into another. Table salt will do. Then put a grape in each cup. You'll see how it immediately sinks to the bottom of the cup filled with fresh water. The grape will stay afloat in the cup filled with salt water. The same thing is happening inside the Black Sea. But there is another side to this phenomenon. The upper layer of water is rich in oxygen. This means it can support life. The bottom layer, however, is anoxic. Yep, you guessed it. This means there is no oxygen at the bottom. But this isn't a bad thing. Because of this trait of the Black Sea, shipwrecks are able to survive for centuries. Oxygen decomposes wood. And from what material did the ancient people make their ships? That's correct, timber. Recently, in 2018, scientists discovered the oldest Greek shipwreck on Earth. The merchant ship lies more than a mile deep at the bottom of the sea. Experts estimate that the vessel is 2,400 years old. The wreck was valuable for historians to study all the elements of ancient ship construction. From the mast to the rowing benches, it's all intact. The wreck lies some 50 miles off the coast of Bulgaria, but no one has seen it in person. Explorers sent a deep-sea ROV, or remotely operated vehicle, to film the wreckage. It was impossible for a diver to go down. But the Black Sea doesn't look that huge on a map. Could it be that deep? Oh yes, it's way deeper than people think. You could stack 6 Empire State Buildings at the deepest point of the Black Sea, around 7,257 feet. This inland sea isn't the only place on Earth where researchers have discovered shipwrecks and underwater rivers. One of the largest channels running along the ocean floor lies off the coast of South America. It runs from the mouth of the mighty Amazon and into the Atlantic Ocean. Studying underwater rivers isn't an easy task. The depth and the strong currents make it impossible to send in divers. Even the equipment for underwater research has to be sturdy. Otherwise, the current will just wash it away. That's why the underwater river in the Black Sea was ideal for scientists to explore. Earth's oceans and seas are powerful. But, lucky for us, there are places where divers can admire underwater rivers. Ever heard of a cenote? Sounds Spanish. Well, that's because it is. Cenotes are underground caves. They form after the limestone above collapses, revealing the groundwater under them. The term cenote is associated with the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. Ancient Maya used them as water sources. In the Mayan language, the word cenote meant sacred well. Researchers estimate there are some 10,000 cenotes spread across the Yucatan Peninsula. You can also find them in other places, such as Cuba and Australia. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but unofficially, the most beautiful cenote is located just south of the town of Tulum in Mexico. The name reflects the cave's divine beauty, Cenote Angelita. But people don't visit this cenote to go swimming. Its bottom is much more interesting. A scuba tank is all you need to finally admire an underwater river firsthand. The waters are dark and foggy, so divers use powerful flashlights. After a 100-foot dive, a marvelous sight appears. An underwater river with trees along its banks. Some of them even have green leaves, just like any other water flow on dry land. But it's not really a river. Here comes the fascinating part. Remember how saltwater and freshwater don't mix? Well, the river the divers see is actually a thick layer of fog between the two types of water. 3 feet of hydrogen sulfates to be exact. This is the compound that water processing plants use to remove chlorine from drinking water. The substance is so heavy that the fog it produces moves independently from the surrounding water, and it creates an illusion that a river is flowing underwater. But there are other real rivers that play tricks on you. Take, for example, the Mystery River in Indiana. It's the longest underground river in the United States. Explorers discovered the river and its cave system, Blue Spring Caverns, in the 19th century. Nearly 3 miles of the river are navigable. Isn't that impressive? You can book a boat tour on a river that you can't even see. But the most mysterious river on the planet is the Saraswati River in India. The coolest part about it is that it doesn't exist. It was an alleged river only mentioned in ancient literature. For centuries, people thought that it was just a myth. Then satellite images showed that it might be real. Ancient texts spoke of a major confluence of 3 mighty rivers, the Ganges, Yamuna, and Saraswati. The first 2 are visible today, but where's the third one? That's what scientists decided to find out. Images from an American satellite showed the presence of underground water in the area. Until then, researchers thought that these were paleo channels. This simply means that water flowed through them a long time ago. But, to their surprise, it appeared that there was still water inside these channels. Scientists estimated that the Saraswati River flowed above the ground some 5,000 years ago. But it didn't dry up completely. It just went underground, some 200 feet below the ground. Local experts believe that the river still slowly flows into the sea. The Saraswati River got hidden under the desert sand. This was a natural process, but many rivers have been forced underground because of human activity. In London, England, several dozen small and medium-sized rivers now flow under the ground. Maps from the 19th century still show them as rivers, but today they only exist in the names of the streets that were built above them, such as Fleet Street. The same thing happened in New York, but this doesn't mean that these streams have disappeared for good. When engineers want to rebuild or modify a building, they still consult city maps from centuries ago. No one wants a long-lost brook to flood their basement.
Now, history teaches us that the supercontinent existed a long time ago, around 300 to 273 million years back. At that time, all the continents on Earth were buddies and hanging out together. They formed an amazing crew called Pangaea, or Pangaea if you're feeling fancy. The name comes from a Greek word which means all the Earth. Pangaea also had a massive water neighbor called Panthalassa. So our entire world was a huge piece of land surrounded by a huge piece of ocean. The megacontinent looked like a giant sea, stretching between the tippy top and bottom of our planet. But as stories go, things changed. About 200 million years ago, in the early Jurassic epoch, like dinosaur times, Pangaea decided to throw a breakaway party. Forget about the old ideas of continents just drifting around like big icebergs. It split up into smaller chunks, forming the continents we know today. Oh, and it created the Atlantic and Indian Oceans as a bonus. Pangaea's tale was first told by a German weather expert named Alfred Wegener in 1912. But how did he learn about something that happened so long ago? Imagine the Earth's core as a big, cozy fireplace, giving off heat. This heat creates special swirling currents in the Earth's outer shell. We can think of it as the Earth's crust. which looks like a big puzzle with many puzzle pieces. The hot currents make these puzzle pieces, called crustal plates, move around. Sometimes they push apart, sometimes they crash into each other, and sometimes they slide past one another. It's like a fantastic dance party that goes on beneath our feet. One day, Wegener looked at the shapes of the continents and thought that, hey, those coastlines of South America and Africa kind of fit together. And they really did. So he imagined that way back, all of the continents hung out together as one big landmass. But he couldn't just go and say that without any proof. So how do we know Pangaea really was a thing? Well, there are some clues that brought us to this amazing discovery. One clue is like when you put a puzzle together and the pieces fit just right. Take a look at the shapes of today's continents. You'll notice that they could fit together almost like a perfect match. Obviously, their shapes changed over time. It happened millions of years ago, and since then, the shores of continents have been washed by waters for years. But even so, we can still see how well they fit together. Another clue comes from checking out fossils. We know that ancient animals left a lot of fossils behind. That's how we learn their history and what species there were. But when scientists compared fossils found on different continents, they found something interesting. These fossils look similar. Surprisingly, they belong to the same groups of animals, even though they were far apart. It's not like these animals could swim across the ocean on their four paws. And it's unlikely that this particular type of animal originated in two places at the same time. And finally, the mountains. Imagine exploring underwater and finding huge mountains in the oceans. These underwater ranges and deep trenches are like scars from when Earth's tectonic plates moved around. They serve as another proof that the continents are part of something bigger. When you look at these things together, you get a pretty clear picture. The Earth's continents were once huddled together in the supercontinent. They've since gone their separate ways, but the memories of their grand adventure are still written in the shapes of coastlines, the rocks they left behind, and many more. But it's obvious to us now. At the time of Wegener's discovery, there were different ideas flying around. Some folks thought that the continents sank down to make the oceans, but Wegener had a different take. He thought that the continents are always on the move. He even came up with a fancy phrase, continental drift, to explain it. Later, he was joined by another scientist named Alexander Dutoit. He added a little twist to the story, suggesting there were two original continents, Laurasia in the north and Gondwana in the south. But the real party didn't start until the 1960s, when scientists figure out the secret ingredient in this recipe, plate tectonics. And finally, this theory explained everything Wegener and Dutoit talked about. Wegener's theory was proven correct after 50 years. As time passed, we learned more and more about our planet. We found out that the Earth used to have multiple supercontinents. Before Pangaea, there was a megacontinent called Rodinia around 1 billion years ago. And later on, Pannotia joined the scene about 600 million years ago. What's interesting is that the continental drift story is far from over. Our continents are always on the move. Africa is giving Europe a friendly bump, and Australia is playing a game of bumper cars with Southeast Asia. You know what's on the horizon? Another supercontinent. So, how will this next supercontinent come together? Well, there are 4 major possibilities: Novo Pangaea, Pangaea Ultima, Orica, and Amasia. These might sound like superhero names, but they're actually ways the puzzle pieces could fit. Let's look at them all. First, Novo Pangaea. You know how there's the Atlantic Ocean on one side and the Pacific Ocean on the other? Well, if these oceans keep doing what they're doing now, the Atlantic will keep opening up while the Pacific squeezes in. If that happens, the Americas, North and South America, will give each other a big high five. And Antarctica, that icy land way down south, will join the fun too. It'll be drifting northward. Next, Pangaea Ultima. In the future, the Atlantic Ocean might get tired of being so wide. It might decide to slow down and shrink a bit. The Americas and the northward drifting Antarctica will probably crash into Africa and Europe. And just like that, a brand new supercontinent forms. There are these spots where the ocean floor is sliding underneath the land. It's like a secret underwater passage. These spots are called subduction zones. So if these secret tunnels will be spreading and spreading all along the east coast of the Americas. The Americas, Europe, and Africa might come together again, and they'd form a supercontinent. This supercontinent would be surrounded by the Pacific Ocean. The next possible supercontinent is Orica. In this scenario, the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans might decide to take a nap and close up. But don't worry, because when one door closes, another opens. In this case, a whole new ocean would pop up to replace them. Imagine a big crack in the ground cutting through Asia, like a zipper opening up. This crack is called the Pan-Asian Rift, and it would become a brand new ocean. With this new ocean comes a new supercontinent, Orica. Australia is currently drifting northwards, like it's trying to find a nice spot at the center of our planet. East Asia and the Americas might join in from both sides. After that, Europe and Africa might link up with the Americas, and boom, Orica. And finally, Amasia. It might form if some of the tectonic plates go north. They can take continents like Africa and Australia along for the ride. They'll be hanging out around the North Pole. All the continents except Antarctica might come together. And even though they might gather around the North Pole, they won't close off the oceans. The Atlantic and Pacific Oceans would still be open for business. How this grand reunion happens depends on the Earth's tectonic movements. So far, we believe that Novo Pangea is the most likely scenario. It also depends on what exactly happened to Pangea after it broke apart. And when the new supercontinent appears, what's going to happen with the weather? How will the ocean behave? And what about the animals and plants? These questions all light up our minds. Who knows? Maybe someday our descendants will look at the world map and see this incredible journey come full circle. So keep asking curious questions and stay tuned for the next 100 million years.
On a sunny day, a man was diving in shallow waters near South Africa. At one point, he saw something that didn't catch his eye at first. A pile of shells that looked as if it had been put together. Maybe by some other diver, he must have told himself. But out of all these shells came the most unusual of creatures, an octopus. The gorgeous underwater animal looked straight at the man before swimming away. Impressed by his new acquaintance, the diver started visiting the octopus every day. He watched it use shells and seaweed to protect itself and learned how it hunted and cared for its eggs. All these encounters became the basis for a now famous documentary. In the movie, the diver wanted to study the relationship between a wild octopus and its observer. Initially, the octopus was a bit too shy to let the man get close. But over time, it began to trust him and even explored his body. At one point, the octopus even rested on the diver's chest. The man soon began to look at the underwater creature as his octopus friend. Sure, the documentary did make it look like a true friendship, but that was most likely because of all the close-ups and eerie music. But you can't really know what the octopus is thinking. Maybe what looks like tenderness is just curiosity or confusion. Maybe an apparent hug is really just a defense mechanism. Some people may love octopuses, but can they really be friends with a human? Until they learn to talk, I guess we'll never know. That doesn't make an octopus less of an interesting creature, though. Apart from those quirky sets of tentacles, obviously, octopuses have another characteristic that sets them apart from other sea creatures. A recent study that involved studying the footage of octopuses living underwater shows that they sometimes develop this unusual behavior. They seem to throw things at each other on purpose. It can be anything from dirt from the bottom of the sea to shells or rocks. Octopuses are known to be solitary creatures, so when something or someone, like an underwater camera person, gets too close to them, they might lash out. Just as we have yet to discover the limits of our galaxies and constellations, we know very little about the bottom of the sea. It's one of the reasons why we find it so hard to explain the behavior of some underwater creatures. The truth is, we don't have good enough technology able to deal with harsh conditions and a limited amount of light underwater. You might have asked yourself at one point, what's the deepest part of the ocean? It's called the Mariana Trench. We don't really know exactly how deep this giant hole is, since it's too difficult to measure, but it's somewhere around 6.8 miles deep and 5 times longer than the Grand Canyon. This massive underwater trench was first studied back in 1875 with the help of a weighted rope. Back in 2012, a Canadian film director reached the bottom of the trench in a submersible vessel called the Deep Sea Challenger. Some of the most bizarre creatures on the planet were discovered here, including the Dumbo octopus, the sea cucumber, and the goblin shark. The Mariana Trench got its name from the nearby Mariana Islands, which were named Las Marianas in honor of Spanish Queen Mariana of Austria. The Mariana Trench might be the deepest part of the ocean that we know of. But one other mysterious phenomenon that's interesting for researchers is called phantom bottoms. In the late 1940s, when the sonar became standard equipment, ships and submarines noticed unexpected signals coming from the ocean. Those signals came from areas where no seafloor was supposed to exist. What's even more mysterious is that this fake seafloor appeared to move. One researcher at Scripps University found out that these phantom bottoms showing on maps were indeed alive. They were made out of a layer of jellyfish, shrimps, and other deep-sea creatures. The reason why they move is that they rise to the surface at night to feed. To top it all off, even the way these creatures move is kinda calculated. They don't just move randomly, but seem to gather together by species. We used to believe underwater animals behave this way only to avoid being caught by predators. It's a mystery to scientists why they group in the same way to form a fake seabed. Our curiosity about the deep waters doesn't stop at the seafloor. If you went on a vacation to the beach when you were young, you probably remember the fun of digging in the sand. As the hole got deeper, you may have asked yourself, could I dig all the way to the other side of the earth? None of us have ever found out. Our parents took us home when it got dark and chilly. Scientists are more reasonable when it comes to this subject. For starters, they know the best place to start digging would be underwater, since those regions are already deeper than what we can find on land. They also do not have the ambition to drill a tunnel through Earth. It's not even possible. That's mostly because of the extreme heat and pressure inside our planet. Even if we could technically dig a tunnel, it would not be safe to travel through it. However, reaching the mantle and retrieving a sample would be a huge scientific achievement, similar to landing on the moon. What we live on is called Earth's crust. Underneath it, there are other layers called the mantle, outer core, and inner core. Researchers have been trying to drill into Earth's mantle since the 1960s, but they haven't succeeded. Some failed due to technical issues, and others were unlucky and chose the wrong places to drill. Our planet's mantle is made of molten rock. Wouldn't that be dangerous if we ever reached it? Scientists say we have nothing to worry about, though. If and when the drillers eventually pierce through the crust underwater, hot molten rock won't pop up the hole and spill onto the seafloor like it would during a volcanic eruption. Mantle rocks aren't solid, sure, but they move slowly, at the same speed as your fingernails grow. Another of those famous deep-sea mysteries is that of the 1997 bloop. You heard that right. I'm talking about a weird sound that seemed to come from deep under the waves. People heard it in the South Pacific. No one had ever recounted a sound like that before. Some thought it must have been emitted by a strange creature living deep in the ocean. It didn't help that the noise came from a location mentioned in a story by famous writer H.P. Lovecraft. In his story, it was a creature called Cthulhu that lived there. In the novel, the author described it as a large, human-like monster with tentacles on its face and wings on its back. For many years, people tried to figure out where the noise came from. It wasn't until 2005 that they concluded it was from icebergs breaking off of glaciers. Some people still don't believe that this explanation truly makes sense and are searching for a different reason for the bloop. If creatures living outside of our planet ever decided to come to visit, you wouldn't expect them to go straight to the bottom of the sea, right? Well, some people claim there's a sort of spaceship on the ocean floor, discovered in 2011. It's basically an oval-shaped object located on the bottom of the Baltic Sea. In 2012, a team of divers explored the anomaly and found what appeared to be a staircase and other structures on its surface. This only added to the belief that the large object had been made by someone and wasn't just a natural phenomenon. Even more bizarre, close to the unidentified anomaly, the explorers' electrical equipment, like sonar instruments and satellite phones, started to malfunction. Some scientists believe it just to be a glacial deposit or some other natural formation, but they still don't know for sure what it is. How would you describe the shape of the planet we live on? It's definitely round, but it's not a perfect sphere. Because of the force of Earth's rotation, it's slightly flat on the north and south pole. But there's more to it. The planet's rotation causes its sides to bulge outwards. The best term to describe our home planet is ellipsoid. Earth is nothing more than an oversized lumpy potato. These are the words of Atraji Ghosh, a solid Earth geophysicist from Bangalore. She and her team have been studying something called the Indian Ocean Gravity Hole. Sounds like the scenario for a science fiction movie, but it's very much real. We think of gravity as something consistent. If you drop a pen from your hand in Los Angeles and in Perth, they're going to fall to the floor at the same time. Well, this is not completely true. Gravity is connected with the mass of a celestial body. Astronauts on the surface of our moon don't walk, but move in hops. That's because Earth weighs 81 times more than the moon. Less mass means less gravity. Earth is more massive, so it has a stronger gravitational pull. But there's a catch. Mass isn't distributed evenly across the planet. As a result, gravity varies as well. NASA has been mapping Earth's gravity field since 2002 using twin GRACE satellites. The maps they produced show where gravity is stronger and where it's weaker. Mountain ranges such as the Himalayas contain a lot of mass. This means they generate a stronger gravity field. The opposite happens in ocean trenches. The deepest of them is the Mariana Trench in the Pacific Ocean. You could almost stack 2 Mount Kilimanjaros inside it. The low concentration of Earth's mass below it means that the gravity field here is weaker. Places on the globe where huge chunks of mass are missing are called geoid lows. A geoid is an imaginary surface that follows the outline of sea levels around our planet. Imagine the Earth without any land. That shouldn't be too hard since the nickname of our home is Blue Planet. Now draw a curvy line along the surface of the oceans, and you get a geoid. In reality, the line stretches across oceans, as well as land masses. Scientists use this imaginary line to calculate the depth of tremors or objects that occur underground. When the wavy line goes down, that's a geoid low. The biggest of them sits at the bottom of the Indian Ocean. The first to discover it was a Dutch geophysicist in 1948. He was performing a gravity survey from a ship. The man noticed that sea levels dipped over 320 feet below the global average. The gravity hole got the official name Indian Ocean Geoid Low. It spans well over 1 million square miles off the southern coast of India. If you went out at sea in the middle of the gravity hole, you wouldn't notice much, just an endless ocean as far as the eye could see. The only way to measure the dip in gravity is through extensive geophysical measurements and calculations. The concept of a gravitational hole existed for nearly 2 centuries in the scientific community, but researchers could study it in high detail only after satellite measurements became possible in the late 20th century. A team of Indian scientists was determined to explain the anomaly that had been puzzling geologists for decades. They used supercomputers to simulate the seismic activity that formed our planet. A total of 19 simulations revealed how tectonic plates moved across the span of over 140 million years. This was during the Cretaceous period, the time when T-Rex roamed the Earth. Nearly a third of the possible scenarios produced a geoid low, similar to the one in the Indian Ocean. The most important factor in these models was the presence of magma plumes. These are places inside the Earth's mantle where lava flows upwards. The mantle sits between the planet's outer core and the thin crust we walk upon. The magma in the mantle plume is hotter than the surrounding rocks. The heat it generates melts and thins the crust. This creates hotspots that are brimming with volcanic activity. Yellowstone National Park and the Hawaiian Islands sit atop such hotspots. The Indian team of scientists linked the presence of magma plumes to the formation of the geoid low. Their source was an ancient ocean that disappeared tens of millions of years ago. It was located where the Himalayan mountain range sits today. Evidence of this lie in the marine rocks researchers found on the world's tallest mountains. The oceans ceased to exist when India's landmass separated from the supercontinent called Gondwana. It drifted north and merged with the rest of the Asian continent. At the time, the Eurasian supercontinent was called Laurasia. The Indian tectonic plate went down inside the mantle. It ended up under the African continent. This landmass contained a lot of crystallized material which was quite dense. When the sinking plate of the former ocean reached it, plumes of magma spilled out. As a result, low-density materials ended up closer to Earth's surface. Density is used to calculate mass, and if you remember our lesson in physics from the beginning of the video, less mass translates into a weaker gravity field. Scientists believe this is how the geoid low in the Indian Ocean formed some 20 million years ago. At this point in prehistory, the Earth looked a lot like it does today. There were vast grasslands, and whales swam in the seas. Geophysicists who created the computer model cannot tell for sure what will happen in the future. Ghosh thinks it's possible that the gravity hole in the Indian Ocean will remain in place for a long time. But plate movements can also cause the anomaly to fully disappear in the coming eons. Earth's tectonic plates are constantly shifting. They define the shape of our continents and oceans. Experts study plate movements to get a picture of how our world looked millions of years ago. However, telling Earth's geologic future is much more complex. The gravity hole in the Indian Ocean is the biggest, but it's not the only one in the world. Other areas with low gravity include the island of Cuba and the Bahamas. On the opposite side of the spectrum are the Philippines. Here, gravity is stronger than normal, but the poles are the places with the strongest pull to them. They are the closest to the center of the Earth. If you stand directly on the North or the South Pole, you are 3,950 miles from the planet's core. At sea level on the equator, this distance increases by more than 13 miles. Earth's gravitational field also has an effect on your weight. At the equator, you weigh 1% less than you do on the poles. The South Pole is maybe more suitable for this experiment because there is actually ground there. But gravity is the strongest at the North Pole in the middle of the Arctic Ocean. This is where scientists in 2013 recorded the highest gravitational acceleration on the planet. This is the rate a falling object speeds up in free fall. The acceleration depends on the strength of gravity. When a team of researchers from a university in Perth set out to map these gravity changes, they discovered something interesting. Gravitational acceleration was the highest at the surface of the Arctic Ocean. This is something they expect to find, but the location of the lowest acceleration point amazed them. It wasn't on the equator as they assumed. The spot lay more than 600 miles south of it at Mount Huascarán in Peru. Scientists believe that the mountain's height had an effect on the phenomenon. This peak in the Andes is the highest point in the South American country. Hypothetically speaking, if a human falls from a height of 330 feet here they will reach the ground 16 milliseconds later than if they performed the same stunt in the Arctic.
You're strapped in a boat cruising down the Amazon River with the sun scorching hot. As you check out your map, your boat starts rocking back and forth. The water is starting to get more intense, so you hang on for dear life. You tuck your map in your pocket and try to take control of your boat. You strike some jagged rocks and duck low to avoid tree branches. Your boat strikes a large rock out of nowhere and capsizes. You're swimming in the murky green water. While you're trying your best to get ashore, your boat gets washed away. Underneath the water lies a whole new world of bizarre and dangerous animals. Candiru fish are snake-like creatures that can grow up to 16 inches long. Arapimus can weigh more than an adult male and are taller than most basketball players. They're the biggest freshwater fish in South America. They have a hybrid gill system that forces them to pop up to the surface every 5 to 15 minutes to breathe in oxygen for their large swim bladder. You swim out of the raging water and dry yourself off. Oh no, your map is completely soaked. There's no way you can get to your destination without it. You venture into the thick rainforest, shoving the branches and leaves away. As you get deeper, you notice something on a tree. It's barely moving, but it's got sharp claws and a raggedy coat. It stretches its arm to another branch and tries to pull itself up, ever so slowly. Sloths sleep more than half their days and only head down from trees once a week. They're so motionless, they sometimes grow algae and moss on their fur. The rainforest gets denser with each step until there's barely any sunlight illuminating the path in front of you. You notice a figure following you. With every branch you step on, you can hear a faint sound right next to you creeping around. You start walking a bit faster, and the sound catches up with you. You make it out of the dense part and tread along a narrow path until you reach a cliff. You can't walk normally here, so you pin against the wall and walk sideways to cross the hills. You slowly move across with the river 30 feet below you. You move your right foot, and some rocks fall into the river. You keep going and misstep. You're about to fall, but you hold on to a large tree branch and pull yourself up. You notice a couple of colorful poison frogs inches away from your fingers. Touching any of these frogs can be extremely dangerous and harmful, despite their amazing color patterns. The golden poison frog is one of the most poisonous animals in the world. One of them hops right next to you, so you let go of the branch and fall back in the river. The river is washing you down until you reach a calm current. Underneath you is a swarm of piranhas swimming with their sharp teeth. The red color on their skin is unmistakable, so you swim off like an Olympic athlete. Piranhas will eat anything that gets in their way, no matter the size. You grip onto a log and climb up a small rock to catch your breath. There's a huge electric eel underneath the rock. Despite their name, they're more related to catfish than eels. They use their powerful 600 volts of electricity to defend themselves and catch food. You're stuck, unless you're like the common basilisk that can run on the water like a jet ski. These incredible lizards have special webbing on their toes and can run the distance of a basketball court. You hop on a bunch of rocks until you reach the land. You continue walking along the riverbank until you come across a moving rock. You rub your eyes and see it moving again. It's a dinosaur-looking turtle that resembles a crocodile with armor. The mata mata is a freshwater turtle that disguises itself with its surroundings to catch prey. Their heads stretch longer than their bodies. You shimmy your way past it and continue. You head back into the rainforest and find a spot to rest. Wait, there are giant ants everywhere. They're the biggest ants in the world and can produce one of the most painful stings out there, even comparable to a wasp's sting. You immediately get up and find another place to rest. As you continue walking along, you notice the same feeling of something following you. You can hear some leaves rustling, but it's getting dark and there's no way of telling. You find a nice little spot to build a campfire and catch some Z's. But in the Amazon, everything is a threat. Except for those cute capybaras wandering around. They live in groups next to water sources. They're also the biggest rodents in the world. You don't need to worry about them if you're stuck in the middle of the Amazon rainforest. Suddenly, you feel something slithering up next to you. You look down and see a massive green anaconda just about to constrict you. They are the heaviest snakes in the world and can grow up to 20 feet long and have a huge appetite. You get up and sprint your way out of there. All right, you found a decent cave to crash in. It's daytime again, and you're still alive. You continue walking along the rainforest. You were able to find some breakfast to boost your energy for the rest of the day. You spot something on a tree that looks like a branch, but it's actually a potu, a master of disguise that can spend days motionless on broken tree branches. These bizarre birds use those branches as their permanent home, where they lay their eggs and chill all day. You continue your way through the rainforest and see a Brazilian wandering spider crawling on a tree branch right in front of you. 8 of these species can be found in the Amazon area. They are some of the most aggressive and venomous spiders out there. So, you make a big detour and walk away from it. You feel someone walking next to you again, but you still can't figure out what it is. You see a steep cliff with a waterfall hitting a large lake ahead of you. Looks peaceful, until you see a team of black caimans gathering around the shore. They're the biggest predators in the whole Amazon ecosystem and feed on anything that moves. It's a good thing you're on high ground, otherwise, whoa! You slip and fall down the river, right on the deep end. So far, no caimans spotted you. You swim underwater and try to get to the opposite end of where the reptiles are. As you climb out and dry yourself off, you notice some large black spots on you. You try pulling them off, but they've latched on pretty hard. The Amazon giant leech finds its target by tracking movement and shadow. Once they attach themselves to the skin, it's extremely difficult to extract them. The best way to do so is to slide your finger next to its mouth and pull it off slowly. Ugh. You manage to get them off your body and see that the caimans are swimming towards you. You're pinned to the wall with the lake of hungry reptiles approaching. Suddenly, a pink dolphin jumps out of the water and splashes all over them. They can grow larger than humans and are the celebrities of the Amazon. Scientists think they get their color from the blood capillaries on their skin. The Amazon even has bull sharks swimming around. These carnivorous giant fish are threatening to humans and can swim in both saltwater and freshwater. These sharks prey on anything within their reach, including other sharks. The dolphin distracted the caimans, so you climb up the cliff and try to find the best way to escape. Opened jaws waiting for you to fall into the pit are right below you. You're lucky enough to escape to the top, but as your arms pull you up, the first thing that you see is a jaguar looking straight at you. It's the creature that's been following you this whole time. You get up while it starts circling you, timing its strike. You know that you can't take on a jaguar, nor can you outrun it, so you grab a large tree branch from the ground to defend yourself. It jumps at you, but you duck down in time. The jaguar lands in the water far away from the caiman crocs. It's a good thing these large kitties are excellent swimmers. You pick yourself up and continue. And to your surprise, you find your boat again. You fix it up and sail your way out of the Amazon. Whew!
Ever wonder why, despite all our advancements in technology and science, there's a vast expanse of our own planet that we barely know about? Believe it or not, over 80% of our oceans remain uncharted territory. It's as if we've got this massive aquatic playground in our backyard, and we've barely scratched the surface. Also, did you know that only about 7% of our oceans have a special tag called Marine Protected Areas, or MPAs? How come this colossal body of water that envelops most of our planet is also among the most vulnerable and misunderstood spaces in the universe? Pressure has a lot to do with it. Our deep ocean is a beast of a place with no visibility, freezing temperatures, and pressure that's so intense that in certain areas it would make you feel like you're having the weight of 50 jumbo jets on your body. No wonder we're having an easier time sending people into space than to the bottom of the ocean. The deeper you go into the waters, the more pressure piles up. But let's not forget we have tech on our side, right? Scientists now use these cool satellite technologies that track the color of the ocean to check how much phytoplankton is there, for example. Why is this important, you might ask? because these little plant-like critters are actually pretty major players in our big blue oceans. In the grand scheme of things in the aquatic world, phytoplankton is like the bedrock of the ocean food chain. It gives life to almost everything, from the tiny zooplankton, which are animal-like microorganisms, to those colossal, magnificent whales. When these technologies first came around, satellites could get clear images of the ocean faster than a ship could take the same number of measurements in 10 years. But it's not all about looking at the ocean from space. Sometimes you gotta dive in there and see it for yourself. Thankfully, we've come a long way in ocean exploration tech too. We've got things like floats and drifters that ride the ocean currents while collecting data, and a whole fleet of underwater vehicles, some of which are manned, some remote-controlled, and some even autonomous. Remember James Cameron, the guy who made the movie Titanic? He's super into exploring the ocean, and in 2012, he set a record by going down to the Mariana Trench in a vertical torpedo sub. He thinks there's nothing like being in the ocean and experiencing it firsthand. Other companies use a mix of technologies for their ocean explorations. It led them to discover amazing stuff like a deep-sea coral reef near Morocco, the only one still growing in the Mediterranean Sea. They've also discovered new species and documented ones previously thought to live only in the Atlantic. These efforts have convinced local authorities to declare some places as marine parks. As with most scientific areas, the road isn't without its bumps. These expeditions can cost quite a lot, and the lack of detailed maps and data only adds to the challenge. We can't always rely on bathymetric information, meaning the study of the ocean floor, because it's often not available. And that's the tricky part. We need to explore more to know more. But getting the funds for these kinds of projects can be tough when there are so many unknown variables. One particular company's explorations have helped protect nearly 4 million square miles of ocean so far. The data they collect during their expeditions is invaluable. It's used to identify new species, locate vulnerable habitats, and even show where threatened species are being overlooked. Their work helps dismiss excuses from local authorities who claim they lack the necessary information to establish more MPAs. The same company supports a goal known as 30 by 30, aiming to protect 30% of our oceans by 2030. It's a big target, and there's a long road ahead, but ongoing ocean exploration can provide the proof needed to keep more of our oceans safe. We also need to set aside areas for protection and research, even when we don't have all the facts just yet. On that note, some cool scientists have recently stumbled upon a gigantic and mysterious world beneath the Pacific Northwest coast's ocean floor. The best part is, this massive realm of life is pretty much cut off from the rest of the world above, making it like a secret underground club that only the best microbiologists have access to. Picture an active city. Except the city is microscopic cracks in the basalt rocks of our oceanic crust, and its residents are microbes. These tiny creatures aren't like you and me. They don't rely on sunlight or the organic products of land and water ecosystems for sustenance. Instead, they thrive on chemical reactions with rocks and seawater. Scientists call this type of life chemosynthetic, which sounds complicated, but it basically means life sustained by chemical reactions. While this sort of life has been found deep in mines and around seafloor hydrothermal vents, the scale at which these creatures are found under the oceanic crust is unprecedented. It might even be the most extensive ecosystem on Earth. A geomicrobiologist from Denmark was part of the team that made this discovery. He claimed that over 50% of our planet's surface is oceanic crust, which is an average of 4 miles thick. Imagine the size of this chemosynthetic party happening down there. This discovery didn't happen overnight. Since the 90s, scientists have found weird tiny holes in the basalt rocks that make up much of Earth's outer crust. They seem like they might have been made by bacteria, but hey, there was supposed to be no life there. I mean, imagine trying to survive in a place that's hot, deep, dark, dense, and mostly devoid of the organic compounds we need for life. Yet, here they are. In the following years, more pieces of the puzzle fell into place. Scientists found that the oceanic crusts had different conditions at the centers and edges. At the centers, rocks are jam-packed with energy-rich compounds that support these tiny life forms. But by the time they reach the edges, these chemicals are all gone. Fast forward to now, and it's time to put the puzzle together. A microbial ecologist from the University of North Carolina worked on this research and says we now have solid evidence of microbial life in the cracks and crevices of deep ocean basalt. The next question scientists asked was, how far does this life extend? Researchers collected samples of crust from a plate roughly 120 miles off of Washington's coast, drilling deep beneath the ocean's surface. What they found down there was remarkable. The life down there runs on a unique fuel, hydrogen. Yep, in the absence of sunlight, hydrogen provides the energy for all their biological processes. These microbes use hydrogen to transform carbon dioxide into organic matter. This matter and other byproducts, like methane, then fuel other organisms, creating a network of life. Of course, the life down there isn't as complex as the one we know up here. Scientists doubt there will be any multicellular life under the ocean because it's too hot and energy poor. But hey, who knows? This universe under our oceans still has a lot to reveal. This whole thing is significant for many reasons. First, it confirms that life can exist in places without oxygen, which changes our perspective on where we can find life. This makes us wonder if life could exist under similar conditions on other planets, where surface conditions might be too harsh. The implications on Earth are also profound. If a large portion of life exists in the oceanic crust, then our understanding of life on our own planet could be completely changed. This exciting discovery stretches our understanding of life and prompts us to keep exploring the mysterious depths of our oceans, pushing the limits of our understanding. NASA is also in on the whole deep sea exploration project. Why? Shouldn't they be preoccupied with outer space? Because they're hoping to find hints about what the oceans on other planets might look like. NASA specialists are really hopeful that by unearthing underwater secrets, we can solve some of the big questions about space. Plus, they're testing some nifty equipment for future journeys across our solar system. Oh wow, there's a hole in the bottom of the ocean! It seems that the ocean has a leak. But it's not like a leak you would expect, where water is flowing out. It's more like a spring since water is flowing in, not out. This unique leak is something we know as Pythia's oasis. A grad student was the one who accidentally discovered it. He noticed bubbles that were rising to the surface. Normally, bubbles in the ocean tell us there might be some hydrothermal vents, which are hotspots for some pretty cool things. These vents are actually like hot springs on the seafloor, but instead of bubbling with warm water, they release a fluid that has been superheated in the crust of our planet. When seawater seeps into these cracks and travels deep into the crust, it comes into contact with the extremely hot mantle. This heats seawater to very high temperatures, and as it moves back up towards the surface, it carries dissolved gases and minerals. When the hot fluid shoots out of the vents, it mixes with the surrounding seawater and quickly cools down. Just a short distance away from the vent, the temperature can drop to a comfortable 68 degrees Fahrenheit or so, which is, as it seems, exactly what some creatures like. And there are some real weirdos living down there in the darkness, like ghostly fish, giant red-tipped tube worms, and a unique type of shrimp with eyes on their back. And some of them, like tube worms and bacteria, rely on the chemicals and minerals released by the vents to survive in harsh conditions. But in this case, the bubbling water didn't come from a hydrothermal vent. It was there because of a spring, and that's a bit more concerning. You see, the water in this reservoir needs to stay where it is. If too much of it seeps out, there could be some serious consequences, especially for the surrounding area. You can see this unusual leak along the Cascadia subduction zone, which is a massive fault line off the Pacific Northwest coast. It's a place where two pretty big plates that make up Earth's crust come together and slide along each other. The water from Pythia's oasis kinda acts as a lubricant between these plates. You can think of the fault zone as an air hockey table. When the fluid pressure is high, it's like you've turned the air on. That means the friction between the plates is reduced, which allows the plates to move. But if the fluid pressure is lower, the two plates can lock together, which then leads to the buildup of stress. Not that they'll feel bad. In the context of tectonic plates, stress is some pressure or force that can cause deformation. And if this stress starts to build up, at some point, it's gotta go somewhere. When it's too much, it can trigger earthquakes and most likely, not small ones. For example, a release of stress in the Cascadia subduction zone could lead to a magnitude 9 earthquake. For comparison, the biggest earthquake we've ever recorded happened in Chile in 1960, and it had a magnitude of 9.5. The damage was enormous. So we hope the water will stay in its reservoir and keep maintaining the delicate balance between the tectonic plates. We've explored only 5% of the ocean. Who knows how many cool things are there at the bottom, waiting to be found? For example, check out these mysterious holes scientists have stumbled upon in the depths of the Atlantic Ocean, near the Azores. They're neatly aligned and are about 4 inches apart, or in some cases, even several feet. They resemble punctures left by a sewing machine. Some think these holes could have a biological origin. For instance, some fish may have made them while walking along the seafloor. Others believe we could be looking at something that's human-made, maybe left by a spiked tire. Of course, such holes are perfect for making up stories about creatures from other planets who allegedly made them. Or maybe even legendary monsters, like that one from Loch Ness. It's definitely hard to explain such symmetry of the holes, but one deep-sea biologist offered a pretty good explanation. He said there could be an animal burrowing beneath the sediment, and from time to time, it could make little chimneys just to get access to clean water circulation in its small burrow. I mean, there are sediment piles around the opening of each hole, and they do support the idea that something pushed the soil from below. But there's still no proof these holes are actually connected beneath the surface. And there are also a lot of things hidden at the bottom of the oceans and seas that ancient civilizations left us. For instance, archaeologists made a really cool discovery off the southern coast of Croatia, a road hidden under layers of sea mud that's 7,000 years old. They found the ancient road at the sunken Neolithic site of Solin. The site of Solin was a human-made island in ancient times, and an archaeologist discovered it 2 years ago. He was studying satellite images of the area around Korčula, one of the beautiful Croatian islands. When he realized there could be something interesting at the bottom of the sea, he dove into the water with his colleague. And under the surface of the Adriatic Sea, which is part of the Mediterranean Sea, at a depth of 13 to 16 feet, they found stone walls that were most likely part of some ancient settlement. The landmass where people built the settlement was separated from the main island by a narrow stretch of land. Luckily, this area is protected from big waves by the surrounding islands, so the site remained relatively well preserved. It's now hidden beneath the surface of the sea and covered in mud. But it's so exciting to imagine how people walked on that road nearly 7,000 years ago, visiting nearby settlements. If you want to see the weirdest creatures, you can always head to the bottom of the sea. Actually, scientists have determined there could be more than 30 potentially new species at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean. They've collected them using their remote-controlled vehicle. That's a big step because until recently, they could only study such creatures through photographs. I'm talking about segmented worms, different types of coral, some invertebrates similar to centipedes, and many others. But there are also many old freaky creatures that we already know about that look like they came from sci-fi movies. Red octopus, blobfish. Okay, this one kinda looks normal until you raise it to the surface. The goblin shark, Sloane's viperfish, zombie worms. Ugh. Yeah, I hear ya. Let's move on. The seafloor hides things from space too. There are traces of rare forms of plutonium and iron at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean. And what's awesome is that all this has come from space. These radioactive materials probably formed during some kind of cataclysmic event in space and eventually made their way out to our beautiful home planet. And this extraterrestrial debris most likely appeared on Earth within the past 10 million years. After it fell to the Pacific Ocean and settled at a depth of almost a mile, it became part of all those layers of rock down there. Plutonium is especially exciting for scientists. I mean, only tiny amounts of it have been found. Hundreds of atoms maybe. But it's still remarkable because these atoms are created by exploding stars. Things like this can help us better understand how the universe produces elements heavier than iron, like plutonium, gold, uranium, and platinum. We're still not sure about the origins of these elements. For a long time, scientists believed that supernovae, which is when a star comes to its end in a fabulous explosion, were responsible for creating these heavy elements. But it seems it's not just that. Some other cosmic events, such as the collision of neutron stars, which are super dense collapsed stars, or some rare types of supernovae, could also be involved. Whoa, let me get my popcorn.
Our planet has 5 oceans: the Pacific, Atlantic, Indian, Southern, and Arctic, not counting Billy Ocean. But it seems there's a 6th one out there too. It's just that you can't see it. Scientists have found evidence of large amounts of water hidden in the transition zone. That's the boundary layer that separates the upper and lower mantle of our planet. That boundary goes hundreds of miles deep down below the surface. Natural diamonds usually form in the mantle, but at depths of up to 155 miles. Some of them are very rare. They may come from deeper depths. That was the case with this fascinating diamond that formed 410 miles below the surface. The gem was big enough for scientists to study it and determine what it was made of. They were surprised when the composition of this very rare diamond showed that it was formed in pretty watery conditions. Because of that, such a diamond wouldn't be worth much in jewelry stores, but it was priceless in the lab. So, could this mean there's an ocean under the surface of our planet? It would definitely get us closer to the idea Jules Verne had about this whole magical secret world inside Earth, including the ocean. But that's not exactly the case. The water is there, true, but it's not like you can enjoy the view watching waves splashing around like on the surface of our planet. The water is actually stored within the minerals. That's why this area is so wet. Let's now move to Africa to keep up with the story, or to be more specific, to a spot called the Afar region. It's part of Ethiopia and a place where 3 tectonic plates meet. Tectonic plates are large pieces of our planet's crust that slowly move. These movements cause earthquakes and produce volcanoes, mountains, deep underwater valleys we call trenches, and so on. And the Afar Valley is where the Arabian, Somali, and Nubian plates meet. Together, they form an intersection in the shape of a Y. Why? Let me tell you. These plates are moving all the time. The Somali plate is moving southeast toward the Australian and Indian plates. The Arabian plate is moving north, getting closer to the Eurasian plate. At some point, it will close the Persian Gulf. This movement of plates has created something we call the Great Rift Valley, considering there are, all these cool rifts. The Aden Ridge to the east, the Red Sea Rift to the west, the Oculus Rift and the East African Rift to the south. But the East African Rift is something we want to focus on, because this one could be the key to this potential 6th ocean, but this time on the surface. A continental rift is a spot where 2 tectonic plates that form a single continent start to separate. Here it's the Somali and Nubian plates. Together, they're parts that make up Africa. If they keep moving in separate directions, this currently continental rift may become what we call an oceanic spreading ridge. In other words, when the plates are far enough apart from each other, there will be an enormous crack between them. This way, magma will freely flow up from beneath them. It'll be cool and eventually start creating a new ocean floor. Africa will be split into 2 parts, and there will be a new ocean flowing between what will turn into 2 mini-continents. Nope, it's not time to get your swim trunks and sunscreen yet. Even if the Somali and Arabian plates do move far enough to form an oceanic spreading ridge, it'll take millions of years before this happens. So I guess it's more interesting to stick to exploring the sixth ocean below the Earth's surface for now. The idea of subsurface oceans goes beyond the borders of our planet. It's possible many moons and planets out there have them too. Our home planet is the only one we know about with consistent bodies of liquid water on the surface, true. In our solar system, we circle around the Sun in something called the habitable zone. The temperature and atmospheric pressure within this zone allow water to remain in liquid form all the time. But a couple of moons in our solar system could also contain significant amounts of water under their surface. Enceladus, one of Saturn's moons, is the first one. Enceladus is a small frozen ball, 7 times smaller in diameter than our moon, but it's the 6th biggest moon of Saturn. Nearly a decade ago, a spacecraft found evidence that there was a large ocean under its surface. It found and sampled water from the eruptions that resembled geysers. A geyser is a rare type of hot spring that erupts and sends jets of steam and water into the air. You know, like Old Faithful in Yellowstone? Well, this water was erupting through fissures in the ice at the south pole of the moon. That means there might be a liquid ocean under the thick layers of ice. The ocean there is almost nothing like ours. The ocean on Earth is relatively shallow, on average 2.2 miles deep, and it covers 3/4 of our planet's surface. It gets colder the closer you come to the seafloor, and is warmer if you stay close to the surface because of the sun's rays. But the subsurface ocean on Enceladus is at least 18 miles deep. It's cooler at the top because that part is near the ice shell, and warmer at the bottom because of the heat coming from the moon's core. But both our ocean and the ocean on Enceladus are salty. Enceladus is one of the few places in our solar system that has liquid water, which makes it an interesting spot to search for signs of life. Another one is Europa, one of Jupiter's moons. Scientists think similar eruptions of water could be happening there. Knowing there are such geysers there tells us these moons have their own source of energy. Maybe the energy that makes the water erupt comes from gravity or radiation. The same energy could keep a large body of liquid water under the ice. It could even support some forms of life. There are thousands of planets beyond our solar system that orbit other stars. Some are even in the habitable zone. Over 1/4 of the ones that we know about could have liquid water, but the majority of them probably have oceans under their surface, like Enceladus and Europa. Pluto might be on this list too, since it's possible it hides a liquid ocean under its thick frozen shell. This subsurface ocean likely formed long after the dwarf planet did, after the heat coming from radioactive elements in Pluto's core melted some of its ice. There's also something called water worlds. Those are moons or planets with global oceans that are more common than we thought. I mean, some call Earth a water world too. 71% of its surface is water after all. And when you look at our home planet from space, you mostly get those blue marble pictures. When exploring other planets, especially those outside of our solar system, researchers often go with a policy of follow the water. After all, water is the main element we know that's necessary for supporting life. And when there's a water world that's close to its parent star, scientists assume it must have formed way farther and then moved closer once its orbit shrank. The composition of the planet was set when it was in a colder orbit, or, in other words, when it made a wider circle around its star. We call the process of orbital shrinking a migration. And if water worlds are really that common, it can be proof that migration really happens. Exoplanets are all those planets that orbit around other stars, not our Sun. Some exoplanets may have oceans that are way deeper than any of those in our solar system, hundreds or even thousands of miles deep. Our Mariana Trench is scary, and it's not even 7 miles deep. And those exoplanet oceans are, wow, almost bottomless. In 1945, 5 TBF Avenger aircraft took flight for a routine training exercise around the Bermuda Triangle. In the middle of the exercise, the planes were struck by intense rain and heavy winds, despite the clear weather forecast. The pilots became extremely disoriented and radioed the base to report that their navigational equipment had stopped working. The last thing the base heard was, "When the first plane drops below 10 gallons, we'll all go down together," and then static. The 5 planes and their 14 crew members were never seen or heard from again. On his very first voyage to the New World in 1492, Christopher Columbus sailed through the Bermuda Triangle. Columbus reported that one night when he was on the deck of the ship, he noticed a giant light appear in the distance, unlike anything he had ever seen before. Columbus looked at his compass for direction, and it gave off erratic readings. You might have noticed that the Bermuda Triangle doesn't appear on any world map. This is because official institutions refuse to acknowledge that the area actually exists. A popular theory suggests that rogue waves are responsible for the many disappearances. Rogue waves are called extreme storm waves by scientists. They occur when different weather patterns take place at the same time and cause large, unexpected waves. Witnesses say that the waves look like giant walls of water. These waves could explain why ships go down fast and without leaving any trace. The Bermuda Triangle is home to some pretty intense and unexpected weather. Storms build up quickly and unexpectedly, then disappear soon after. If you blink, you might miss it. This could explain why few distress signals are issued. Pilots and sailors never saw the weather coming. No one knows exactly how many ships and planes have disappeared in the Bermuda Triangle. The rough estimate is 50 ships and 20 planes. Most of the time, the disappearances had no explanation and no wreckage has ever been left behind. Another bizarre theory trying to solve the Bermuda Triangle mystery comes from Charlie Berlitz. He insists that the area is home to the lost city of Atlantis. The missing ships and planes and malfunctioning equipment, according to him, were all caused by rays of energy let out by the special energy crystals that power Atlantis. While this sounds silly, Berlitz's theory was convincing enough that over 20 million people bought his book worldwide. In the year 1800, a large sailing vessel called the USS Pickering departed from the U.S. on its way to the West Indies. The ship sailed into the Bermuda Triangle along with its 90-man crew and was never heard from again. The USS Pickering was the first ever confirmed ship to vanish in the Bermuda Triangle. It's believed that the ship was taken out by a storm, but because no wreckage was ever found, we'll never know for sure. When the TBF Avenger planes went missing, a massive search operation was conducted. Boats and planes searched the Bermuda Triangle for any signs of the aircraft. One of the boats searching was a PBM-5 Mariner airboat. The airboat took flight at 7:27 p.m. and called in a routine radio message 3 minutes later. Then, it was never heard from again. No trace was ever found of the rescue airboat or the 5 Avenger aircraft. An enormous investigation was launched into the disappearance of all these vehicles, but nothing was ever discovered. This particular area of the ocean is one of the most heavily traveled shipping routes in the world. Some skeptics believe that this fact solves the mystery. Statistically, the busier the area, the higher the frequency of accidents and disappearances. While this makes sense, it's not the frequency of disappearances that's responsible for the mystery of the Bermuda Triangle. It's the lack of explanation or wreckage found. On the ocean floor, decomposing organisms let off large concentrations of methane gas that gets trapped under the water. This gas can build up until, boom, it ruptures. The gas surges up to the surface and erupts. If a ship was in the area of one of these ruptures, the water would become much less dense and cause the ship to sink rapidly and without warning. Scientists believe this could be the cause of the many disappearances in the Bermuda Triangle. While this theory makes a lot of sense, it doesn't seem too likely. The U.S. Geological Survey has stated that no large releases of gas are believed to have occurred in this area for the past 15,000 years. The ocean floor is made of rocks containing a lot of magnetite. It's more like iron. Magnetic fields react to high concentrations of magnetite on the ocean floor, which may start a sort of conflict between the two. It can often lead to various weather anomalies and, as a result, navigation issues. And, naturally, any changes in the ocean floor or the Earth's magnetic fields influence the Bermuda Triangle a lot. Since the magnetic field is constantly moving, it might be also taking the Bermuda Triangle with it. Now that people know where the triangle is, it's easy to avoid it. It supposedly moves eastward together with the magnetic poles. But scientists still can't answer where exactly it will be in a couple of years. Some people blame all the disasters on the extraterrestrial paranormal activity. Others suppose it's all about raging natural phenomena. There's another triangle in Lake Michigan. Just like the one near Bermuda, the Michigan Triangle got its shady reputation for some disappearances. The first recorded one dates back to 1679. A large vessel, one of the largest of that time, set out on an expedition. Yet once it got in the sinister triangle, it never came back. Much later, an aircraft disappeared in this triangle. The skies are usually very clear there, but back in 1883, some people witnessed abnormal things in the area. Some claim to have seen large blocks of ice falling from the skies, and the crew even managed to save one as hard proof. Meanwhile, the Pacific Ocean Mystery Area is another sinister triangle. Off the south coast of Japan, not far away from Tokyo, there's a sea where plenty of ships met their doom, disappearing without a trace in these waters. They call it the Devil's Triangle. Some scientists believe the cause of anomalies is the environmental changes. Also, there's a really high concentration of methane hydrates on the bottom of the ocean in the Pacific Triangle area. You're deviating from your original course and sailing in the wrong direction. There's the Caspian Sea near the triangle, peppered with small islands. The seafloor here isn't deep. The ship can get in shallow waters. And now the ship is stuck on a shoal, and you have no idea where you are. If this were the 21st century, the ship's captain would be able to reach the shore using GPS and other modern navigation. But the most interesting thing is that the compass would work correctly this time, since the magnetic North Pole hasn't already coincided with the true one for a long time in the territory of the Bermuda Triangle. The agonic line is somewhere far away from here. There are no problems with navigation now, but for some reason, this is where ships disappear. In fact, not just here. Throughout the Atlantic Ocean, there are places where many more ships were gone. The Bermuda Triangle is not even in the top 10 of such places. One of the main reasons why many ships are lost here is that one of the most popular shipping routes in the Atlantic passes through the Bermuda Triangle. And the more ships in one place, the more shipwrecks. Simple probability. Then, it just starts getting weird. Other theories say that there's a space-time rift in this region. Ships and planes fall into this rift and end up in the past or the future. But for some reason, there's not a single proof of this myth. There's no reason to think that the rift is hidden somewhere here. The base of an extraterrestrial civilization is located in the Bermuda Triangle. Visitors from other galaxies steal sea vessels along with the crew, so no one finds the wreckage of the ships. This is also a popular myth that has no scientific justification. The Kraken lives somewhere in the triangle. It's a huge squid that sinks ships and also is a legend that sailors tell each other. However, gigantic squids live in the depths of the ocean. They can grow to the size of half a train car, but no cases have ever been recorded where they sunk a large vessel. And in the area of the Bermuda Triangle, they have never ever been seen. People in the past didn't know about the existence of these creatures, so when they saw them for the first time, they described them as huge, terrible monsters. Giant squids are some of the most elusive creatures on Earth, and scientists had to use sonar equipment to find them. They don't like to leave the dark depths and are likely to be afraid of the sound of any ship. So, that should squash the squid as a suspect. Okay, let's try something together. Open any world map you have available. It can be the one you find in your bookcase or even an online version. Take a look at the vast area covered by water. That's 71% of the Earth's surface. And all that is salt water from the world's oceans. There aren't any borders between the four oceans we've all come to know. But oceanographers and the world's countries did traditionally split these waters into 4 distinct regions: the Pacific, Atlantic, Indian, and Arctic Oceans. And here comes the big surprise. The scientific community has recently recognized the 5th body of water. It's called the Southern Ocean, and 3 of the 4 original oceans border it. It circumnavigates Antarctica and the lower portion of the globe and reaches Australia and the southern portions of Africa and South America. What makes this ocean so special? How did the scientific community eventually recognize it? And more importantly, what mysterious creatures does it hide? Let's find out. The Antarctic Ocean, or the Southern Ocean, was first mentioned back in 1937 in the second edition of the International Hydrographic Organization's Limits of Oceans and Seas. That's a mouthful. Back then, this organization considered that it was wrong to consider the Antarctic Ocean as its own distinct body of water. Why? Well, because at that time, an ocean was defined as water surrounded by land and not water surrounding land. However, they reconsidered it in 2000 and voted to include this ocean in the official list. They also decided on the name Southern Ocean over the commonly used Antarctic Ocean. Finally, the organization concluded that the ocean should be considered as ending at the 60th parallel south latitude. But how old is this ocean? Well, many specialists believe it to have formed only 30 million years ago, which would make it the youngest of the world's oceans. It was created when Antarctica and South America moved away from each other during the early stages of our planet's development. This unique water current is a distinctive component of the Southern Ocean, as it helps keep the waters flowing around the icy continent. It's called the Antarctic Circumpolar Current, and it moves to the east with incredible speed. It's estimated that it moves an enormous amount of water per second. Some of the disputes regarding the Southern Ocean also have to do with this amazing current. Some specialists believe it separates the water of the Southern Ocean from the waters of the nearing Atlantic or Pacific. Only the rapid circulating water is considered the Southern Ocean. On the other hand, though, a handful of scientists say that the current actually makes the naming issue more complex by not limiting the waters to a specific geographic location. They believe that the waters in the current are different in terms of composition from waters in the northern oceans because they are way colder and have a lot more salt. Sailors don't really like this new body of water, mostly because of the frequent cyclone-like storms that it experiences. They happen because of the big temperature difference between the ice packs and the ocean waves. As a result, these storms are very difficult to surpass for any sailors that happen to encounter them. I mean, really, these are the strongest winds found anywhere on our planet. More so, the vessels going through this area must also be wary of the frequent icebergs that may pop up every now and then, and also of the low surface temperatures. Just to paint you a better picture, some of the icebergs found here can span over several hundred meters and can exist all year round, regardless of the season. The latitudes from 50 to 70 have even earned the nicknames of Furious 50s or the Shrieking 60s because of these intense year-round storms. Even the landscape is unique. They say the Southern Ocean has bluer glaciers, colder air, and more intimidating mountains than anywhere else in the world. Now, let's get to the mysterious creatures that call this place home, as thousands of species of wildlife live only here and nowhere else in the world. Let's start with the quirky sea pig, or one of the sea cucumbers as it's sometimes called. There are a lot of them in the waters off Antarctica. Why is it called that way, though? Because of its pink hue and round, bloated looks. On a closer look, it even appears to have a little tail and set of ears, just like a pig. They do help a lot with the quality of the waters here, filtering sand and sediment. Then there are the Hoff crabs that live on the floor of the Antarctic Sea. The Southern Ocean is a cold water environment, but crabs are more adapted to warmer waters. So, Hoff crabs gather around the warmth made by volcanic vents. They get the needed warmth and food here. You can find them in large piles, one on top of another, literally filling the space at the vent openings. Now, wonder how they got their unofficial name? Well, it's because of their apparent similarity to the actor David Hasselhoff, whose impressive chest reminded explorers of the crab. Okay. Ever seen a fish that's completely transparent? You'd have to get to these waters down in the south, but they do exist, and they are simply called the ice fish. You can basically see inside them, being completely clear and all. That's because of their see-through skin and because they don't have any red blood cells. Their special power is that they can use antifreeze to prevent their bodies from going solid in the cold waters of the Southern Ocean. Instead of the standard thicker blood, the red one with hemoglobin, ice fish have thinner blood that moves around more easily throughout their bodies, hence giving them the much-needed nutrients and oxygen. Now, is there a monster hidden in these waters? Some people believe this to be the case, and thanks to recent research, we even have video footage of it. Some Australian researchers stumbled upon a bunch of weird-looking creatures that were swimming near the seafloor of the Southern Ocean. This pink blob-like fish seemed to be propelled by a little pair of fins. To quote them on it, it seemed to resemble a chicken just before you put it in the oven. I'm not sure I even want to know what that looks like. It took them some time and research to identify the monster. It's a shy species of sea cucumber, known more by its creative nickname, the headless chicken monster. We've known this creature has existed since the late 1800s, but we've barely ever seen it, and we've only ever captured it on tape once before when it was spotted in the Gulf of Mexico, which is quite far from the waters off the coast of East Antarctica. There's so much we don't know about this creature, like how many of them exist in our waters and how they live, eat, and reproduce. Ever heard of the emperor penguin? It's not a penguin species that just happens to have a crown on its head, if that's what you're thinking. But they are one of those penguins that inhabit this specific location and are also the largest species of their kind altogether. What makes them special is that they make their colonies on the sea ice, and most of them never step foot on land. More so, penguin dads lose almost half their weight while incubating the eggs. They're also fascinating swimmers, able to dive deeper and longer than any other bird, up to 700 feet. Not to mention they can stay submerged for up to 18 minutes at a time as they gather food. We have yet to uncover all the secrets of the mysterious Southern Ocean, but it's clear that it's home to some unique and fragile marine ecosystems. Recognizing it as a new ocean could be one way to focus the public attention on it and help its conservation. Back in 2018, the biggest active underwater eruption ever happened, at least the one that we could officially record. Scientists followed earthquakes that struck the area in the western Indian Ocean off Madagascar. Between 2018 and 2021, over 11,000 earthquakes struck a small island called Mayan between Madagascar and Mozambique. The strongest one had a magnitude of 5.9. Until then, this area had been pretty peaceful. There had only been 2 earthquakes recorded over 50 years. Along with regular earthquakes, there were also some unusual seismic hums, like earthquakes at pretty low frequencies, forming deep underground. People couldn't feel those hums at the surface, but researchers around the world discovered them and realized they were related to volcanic activity no one actually noticed coming. Something strange happened. That underwater eruption created a giant skyscraper-sized volcano. This new underwater volcano turned out to be around 1.5 times the height of One World Trade Center in New York, and almost 10 times bigger than the Statue of Liberty. The area where it appeared had been explored in 2014, but it was almost flat, peaceful, and empty back then. Now, there is an actual volcano nearly 8,500 feet below sea level. The volcano gets its magma from a super profound reservoir located nearly 34 miles underground. It's the deepest reservoir of volcanic magma that we know about. The Earth has layers, and the middle one is kinda chunky. It's very much like peanut caramel filling many chocolates have. Research shows there are probably hunks of oceanic crust deep inside the Earth's liquid mantle. They're stuck there, creating large lumps in something that was supposed to be a smooth layer. Our planet has a rigid outer layer. It includes a hot upper mantle and cracked crust. The hot mantle moves and churns all the time, making the crust at the surface move too. This way, the oceanic crust dives into the depths and makes huge magma plumes go up toward the planet's surface. Scientists even found an ancient piece of the Pacific Ocean hundreds of miles underneath China. Those are the old remains of the Pacific seabed from long ago, and they were pulled downward below Earth's surface into the mantle transition zone. This rocky slab that used to be at the bottom of the ocean is made of the crust and some solid parts of the upper mantle. Most of the volcanic activity on our planet happens where we don't even see it, under the surface of the ocean. About 70% of all volcanic activity happens in the oceans, and mostly in the area of the South Pacific, with over 1,100 volcanoes squeezed into that area. Coastal cliffs, mountain changes, soils, and sediments that line valleys. These are only a small portion of the rocks on our planet. Oceans hide so much more deep down below the Earth's surface. In between the Earth's surface and its core is the mantle. It's a warm, thick layer of rock that moves and flows constantly. Some hundreds of miles below, there's a place where diamonds grow. As they form, they go through high temperatures and pressure, after which they eventually freeze. That way, when they arrive at the surface, scientists can explore their structure, find out how they formed, and understand better what's going on in the depths of our planet. Thanks to diamonds, they realized the mantle was very wet, and it possibly contained much more water than all the oceans on Earth. Our planet is eating up its own oceans. As its tectonic plates move, dive, and go beneath one another, they drag huge amounts of water into the Earth's interior. The water beneath the surface of our planet can help with developing magma and lubricate faults, which actually makes earthquakes more likely to happen. Water is actually stored in the minerals. It gets incorporated into the planet's crust when new oceanic plates form. They go through the process of bending and cracking as they grind under other plates, and huge amounts of water then go deep into the crust and mantle. Scientists research an area that's 18 miles under the surface. They realize these zones pull 3 billion teragrams, which is more than 2 billion pounds. Any ocean is like a whole new world. There are incredible sceneries below the surface, magnificent waterfalls, lakes, and rivers. There are thick layers of salt beneath the seafloor, and rivers and lakes form because seawater goes through those layers and dissolves them, creating something that resembles pools. The dissolved salt makes the surrounding water denser. That water then settles there, which eventually forms underwater lakes or rivers. But there are also mountain chains, trenches, canyons. There's a canyon in the Bering Sea with more than 8,500 feet of vertical relief. This makes the Grand Canyon look way smaller than it is, since the underwater canyon is nearly 2,500 feet deeper. Deep parts of the ocean are really cold. The temperature of the water can be about 40 degrees, but at the bottom, water can get boiling hot. There are hydrothermal vents in the seafloor. Those are the hot springs located at the edges of tectonic plates. The water they release can reach a temperature of up to 750 degrees Fahrenheit, but the pressure at such depths is very intense. So intense, no human being can handle it. Still, it's the pressure that keeps the water from boiling. Ocean depth is on average 2.3 miles. Light waves can still enter at 3,280 feet, even though it's in a very small amount. So all the mysteries hidden below that point remain in total darkness. The actual illuminated part of the ocean goes until 600 feet. Even though the sun gives us light, most of our planet is dark all the time. It's all because of the oceans, covering over 70% of our planet. The loudest sound that came from an ocean, and of the loudest sounds ever recorded, came from an ice quake. It was so loud, researchers picked it up by sensors more than 3,000 miles away. There was a seismic activity that made frozen ground break down. The Antarctic ice sheet is bigger than the continental part of the United States and Mexico together. A big iceberg from Antarctica holds over 20 billion gallons of water, which could make a 5-year water supply for 1 million people. Humans can generally drink sea ice, although we can't drink seawater. As time goes by and the ice ages, the brine trapped between ice crystals drains out. That way, ice becomes fresh enough to consume it. If all the ice sheets and glaciers we have on the Earth melted at the same time, the sea level would rise another 260 feet, which is just a little shorter than the Statue of Liberty, the height of a 26-story building. Clams live long enough to tell us more about oceans past. Ancient mollusks can live for more than 500 years. To learn more about a tree, you can use its rings to see how old it is. To learn how old a mollusk is, you can examine its rings within the shell and tell. This is also how scientists get information about the ocean, climate, and whatsoever. Clams can help take a look at what happened about 1,000 years ago. The Earth doesn't have 4 but 5 oceans now. The new one, called the Southern Ocean, was officially recognized only a few months ago. It borders the Atlantic, Pacific, and Indian Oceans, so scientists couldn't agree if it's really a new ocean or just part of the colder regions of these 3. We don't only divide oceans on maps, each has different conditions for unique marine species. For example, the Southern Ocean has leopard seals, orcas, minke whales, emperor penguins, and other animals that live in cold, icy seas. It's also home to krill, small creatures that look like shrimp and are food for many bigger animals that live there. Life on our planet started about 3.5 billion years ago. I wasn't around then. It's still a mystery how and when exactly, but some theories say life could have first emerged in the depths of the ocean. A few years ago, scientists found microscopic tubes and filaments within rocks formed about 4 billion years ago. These rocks are fragments of ancient oceanic crust. Also, these tiny tubes and filaments are similar to microbes that can still be found on hydrothermal vents in deep parts of the ocean. The idea is these living cells found conditions to stay alive in tiny rocky pores inside the chimneys of those vents and started the amazing adventure of the evolution